can start talking.
Guys, this is Marcelino Benito here in the KHOU11 newsroom, breaking in with some breaking news that we're monitoring right now out in Baytown. You're looking at live images from a Houston Transtar camera of a fire at Exxon's plant in Baytown. You can see those thick plumes of smoke from that facility, that Transtar camera at 146 and Spur 330. If you're in the area, you're likely seeing those thick, dark, black plumes of smoke rising from that facility. This is what we know right now from officials in Baytown. Baytown PD are telling us that there are 2 fires actually being reported in that Exxon plant in Baytown. They're telling us there is no outside damage, and Exxon is handling and working on putting those fires out internally. At this point, Baytown PD telling us that there is no shelter in place. Now, if you're likely on Twitter following us there, you're likely seeing tweets from the city of Baytown as well. The city of Baytown has tweeted that right now there is a fire at that facility, the Exxon facility. Again, also reiterating very clear that there is no shelter in place and working on getting us more updates. You're looking at those images right now. We have a crew on the way, reporter Josh Marshall and Air 11 on the way to the scene right now to get you a better look at this fire. But right now you're looking at that Transtar camera. That's our best view of that fire happening at the Exxon plant at this time. Josh Marshall, our reporter there, probably out 20, 30 minutes out from that scene. He'll be bringing us updates as soon as he gets there. Again, if you're joining us on our social media platforms, maybe you're in the area, you're likely seeing that smoke. We do not want anyone to panic. Officials telling us there is no shelter in place. There is 2 fires ongoing right now at that Exxon plant, and Exxon is working to deal with the situation internally. No outside damage, again, reported at this time. We do have Air 11 on the way, and Jaime, I'm seeing you look at some comments. Are people having questions?
Some of our viewers are asking us which Exxon plant this is. Let me turn on my mic. I know some of you are asking which Exxon plant this is. The city of Baytown has not specified which plant this is at. You're looking at the Transtar camera view from Spur 330. But we have not been told which one it is at this time.
My understanding is we know it's at an Exxon plant. Are there 2 in Baytown, or do we know?
I don't know if there's
more than one. Right now, what we're hearing from Baytown PD, our desk checking on this right now, is that it is at the Exxon plant in Baytown. I'm not under the impression that there's more than one, but if there is, we'll work on confirming which location exactly. But that thick black plume of smoke you see is from the fire at the Exxon plant. And again, it's not just one fire, we're told by officials. They're dealing with 2 fires at that plant, and they're working to deal with the situation internally. Of course, we expect to get more updates from officials, both with Baytown PD and the city of Baytown. All right, I'm getting notes here. We want to confirm it is the ExxonMobil's Baytown complex. That is where these 2 fires are happening right now. Again, for those asking on social media, the exact name of this plant where these 2 fires are happening right now is the ExxonMobil Baytown complex. That is where you are seeing these. If you're joining us on social media, that is where those thick black plumes of smoke are coming from. Again, limited information at this time, but important for folks just joining us to know there is no shelter in place, no evacuations, nothing like that. There are 2 fires at that plant, the Baytown complex, and Exxon is telling us they're handling the situation internally. That likely means no firefighting agencies from Baytown or others are having to assist them in dealing with this situation right now. We don't know what's burning, what prompted this fire in the first place. We're working on getting more information from Exxon and from officials out in Baytown.
So we're going to change the shot. We're going to show you some viewer video that was shared with us from the ground. Second here, if you could take a look. And this is a viewer who sent this in just a few moments ago on Facebook. You can see a closer look. Do we know where he
was driving? Do we know where he shot
no, they did not say.
Well, you can see in that video much more impressive video than what the Transtar camera shows. It's obviously closer to that facility. We see a lot more fire, and again, that thick black plume of smoke. Probably concerning to folks in the area when they see that. You can see those fireballs shooting high up as that viewer was driving by. but unclear if it was an explosion or what may have prompted this fire and these two fires and this situation in the first place. I see. Is that more viewer video?
Yeah, we got another video. This one is looks like it's coming, being shot from a window. We'll just switch to that real quickly. It's a little further away.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, yeah. We don't know which office building right now.
No, we don't.
But again, in these viewer videos that we're getting in, you probably see. I'm going to take a safe assumption here that it's video they shot shortly after this situation, because we see a lot more fire than we're seeing in that live Transtar camera picture. Can we go back to that Transtar camera picture?
Pull that up right here.
So that Transtar camera angle, obviously we're further away, but we see less fire. Maybe the clouds of smoke not as intense. If we see that viewer video that we've gotten both from the office building and from someone driving near the area, obviously the situation probably had just happened when they drove by. So hopefully, let's hope the situation is improving. But again, if you're just joining us on social media, we want to recount and recap what we know. Limited information at this time, and of course the information may change as these situations tend to develop. We know there are 2 fires underway at the ExxonMobil Baytown complex. We know, very importantly, if you have loved ones that work at that plant, it's important for you to know there are no injuries reported at this time. There is no shelter in place at this time either, but nonetheless, seeing those thick black plumes of smoke can be concerning for folks. And we're working to find out what exactly prompted these fires and caused them to happen in the first place. Also learning from Baytown PD that these fires are being handled internally. So at this point, firefighting agencies from Baytown don't seem to be involved in trying to put this fire out. That live Transtar picture we have up on the screen for you. From my perspective, this is just my assumption from looking at the video. It looks like maybe the situation is improving. The smoke not as intense, not as black as it was not even 5 to 10 minutes ago. So we are monitoring the situation and trying to learn more. Do we know if we have any viewer questions, Simon?
Not at this time just yet. Not at this time just yet. We're kind of looking to see what everybody's having to say or have questions they may have.
And if you're watching us on social media and you're in the area and you can see from a safe vantage point what's happening, go ahead and send us your viewer video, your pictures, and let us know what you're witnessing out there. And where can they send that, Jaime?
You can send that to assignments@khou.com.
Great. Sure. So a lot of you joining us on our stream saying you guys have loved ones who've taken photos. So again, send us those photos, send us those videos, as long as it's from a safe perspective. A lot of you also relieved, as we are, that so far there are no injuries being reported at the Exxon facility, and again, no shelter in place for those living in the area or working at the plant. The visuals, though, in light of the situations, chemical plant fires we've seen in our area in recent months, this year alone, can prompt some concern, especially for folks in the area. We don't know what's burning, we don't know what's being released into the air, but at this point, I guess positive news that there is no shelter in place and no one is injured at this time. But as we know, these situations are fluid. They tend to develop quickly over time, and as soon as we get more information, we'll of course update you. But those are the highlights that we want to get to you right now. If you have questions, I'm here on social. I can see them if you type them up. So go ahead and ask and we'll get the information that we can for you guys at the time. A lot of you guys tagging. Seems like you guys are tagging loved ones who may work at the plant or near the plant, trying to ask if everyone's okay. Officials telling us again there are no injuries, and this is at the ExxonMobil's Baytown complex, where these 2 fires are burning right now. Any new viewer video or anything like that coming in?
No, not at this time. I was going to show some of the video we had earlier in case you're just joining us. I'm going to put it here side by side here in a second.
So I have a question here from Preston. Preston, thanks for watching us here online. He wants to know what chemicals are burning. We want to know what chemicals are burning too, and we're working to get those answers At this point, we don't know what sparked these fires, if it was an explosion or something like that, or what chemicals may be involved. But again, somewhat reassuring that at least there's no shelter in place at this time. Am I seeing Air 11? Air 11 has arrived, correct?
Correct. I'm about to switch over to show that view. Give me 1 second here.
So shortly, Jaime's working on putting up, there it is. You should be seeing it now. Air 11 has arrived at that Exxon facility in Baytown. And we're getting a better aerial picture. I'm not sure why it's dark. Hopefully they'll figure that out in a second. A better aerial picture from the sky about what's happening at that plant. Again, you see that single black plume of smoke. We're told by officials that there are 2 fires burning at that facility, but really we see one large black plume of smoke. Compared to what we saw when I first came online to break in with this news, it seems like the situation is improving in terms of the darkness of the smoke. Again, those are just assumptions based on what we're seeing visually. But we're working to get more information. Let me check here, see what else people are saying, what questions you guys have. Sierra is asking if it's possible for it to explode. It's probably a question a lot of you have. We don't know the answer to that yet, but again, there is no shelter in place. And I'm going to keep harping on that because that likely tells us, at least early on, how significant or how serious the situation might be. In that Air 11 picture now, we see a lot more. We can clearly see there are still flames. This fire is still active.
You can kind of see a little bit towards the bottom right now. The graphic is kind of covering up, but you can definitely try to put water on the flames.
Towards the bottom of the screen, you
yeah,
see?
to the bottom of the screen. If I think Airline will kind of pan down a little bit here. You can see there in the bottom left-hand corner, they are trying to put water on this fire.
And we do know that it's Exxon officials. The plant itself is handling, trying to put out these fires. As far as we know, no outside firefighting agencies are assisting. This situation is being handled internally by folks at the ExxonMobil Baytown complex. And based on what we're seeing visually as well, sort of confirming what we've reported so far, that there doesn't appear to be, outside damage outside the plant. We mean everything seems to be self-contained in the plant. I don't see people out and about. But yeah, you can see there towards the bottom of the screen, firefighters, Exxon officials trying to put out that fire. We are also checking in with our local law enforcement officials. Ed Gonzalez, Sheriff Ed Gonzalez with the Harris County Sheriff's Office. We've reached out to him. He is telling us that they are monitoring the situation. They're keeping close tabs on it to see how this unfolds. Also, a viewer that we've contacted that has reached out to our newsroom who works behind the plant, not actually at the Exxon facility, telling us that some sort of explosion happened. They said an explosion sort of started this, and they say that when that explosion happened, it shook their entire building and rattled windows. I'd be curious to know how far away this office building is from this Exxon plant. But again, we now have a viewer calling into our newsroom and telling us that when an explosion happened, prompting these fires, it shook that viewer's entire building and definitely rattled windows. I'm going to check out some of the comments you guys are posting here to see if anyone else has any. And again, if you're watching us on social, you experience something like this, an explosion, let us know. We're reading through the comments, scrolling through what you have to say to get more information and a better idea of what's happening out there. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Kat was asking what part of the plant is this, and we are not sure. We haven't been told exactly what part of the plant the fire is at. It does look kind of isolated, but it doesn't look like the fire is spreading.
It seems like whatever is happening, they do have it somewhat under control. We don't know what's burning, which is one of the questions I'm sure a lot of our viewers have, and we're working to get those answers. We also want to reiterate that we are monitoring here in the newsroom. We're breaking in on social, but we have a crew. Reporter Josh Marshall is en route to that Exxon facility in Baytown, and will bring us live reports and give us information as soon as he gets on the ground. We are also working the phone, speaking to Exxon, speaking to law enforcement officials, trying to get a better idea of what is actually happening there at the facility. You can see from Air 11 that fire continues to burn pretty intensely, but they are spraying water towards the bottom of the screen. You see those water spouts just going right into the fire, trying to put it out, but we don't know what's burning at this time. If you joined us just a few minutes ago, let's sort of recap, set the scene here. You're looking at live pictures from Air 11 over the ExxonMobil Baytown complex. We know there, from Exxon officials telling us, there are 2 fires that are burning at that facility. That is in Baytown. No injuries are reported. That is the good news. So if you have loved ones in the area, are concerned about people who work in the area, so far we're being told there were no injuries reported. There is no shelter in place yet. And we're hearing from a witness.
The city of Baytown.
Okay, I'm getting a new tweet here. We're monitoring social media accounts of the city of Baytown telling us, and I'm going to read it for you, our emergency response teams, this is a statement from ExxonMobil saying, our emergency response teams have responded to a fire at our ExxonMobil Baytown complex. As a precaution, our industrial hygiene staff will conduct air quality monitoring around the complex and in the community. So that's good news. It sounds like thanks Chris. It sounds like the facility is appropriately responding, and they're going to be monitoring whatever is being sent out in the air. And that's really the concerns in light of ITC and other things. Our community has experienced these sorts of plant fires. The next obvious question as this situation unfolds is what is burning and what is being released into the air as that thick plume of smoke goes up into the air. That is a concern for folks in and around that facility, folks who live there, folks who work in the area, and Exxon saying they have a special hygiene team that will be monitoring air quality to make sure there's nothing dangerous. At this point, again, no shelters in place and no injuries reported, which we always like to hear. Interestingly enough, a viewer telling us, want to reiterate, this is one viewer calling into our newsroom who says he works behind the plant, I should say, in an office building, and that they heard an explosion, they felt an explosion, and that when that happened, it shook their entire office building and definitely rattled some windows.
Some of our viewers have said,
So this is, I'm going to read, let me take a look at this first. So this is from ExxonMobil. This appears to be a message that was sent out to plant workers, it looks like, or folks who work on the facility. Yeah, and they are saying our emergency response teams, ExxonMobil's emergency response teams have responded to a fire at the ExxonMobil Baytown complex. They are working to extinguish the fire, and again, reiterating they're going to be monitoring the air quality and conducting testing of the air to make sure it is safe for those in the community. Thanks, Chris.
While we haven't confirmed, I know some of you are saying this is the Olefins plant or the BOP. We have not confirmed that, and officials have not exactly said what plant this is, but some of you who may work in there may be familiar with which facility this is, but we have not been able to confirm that. And some
to
people
confirm what?
That this is the Baytown Olefins plant, or sometimes I guess people refer to it as BOP.
I'm reading through some of the comments here. Jaime and Tino Velis, who is watching us online, says that his mother lives about a mile away, and that it shook the windows at his mom's house. He lives a mile away from that Baytown ExxonMobil complex.
I've seen some of these comments. Some people have said that they've felt the explosion, or felt some sort of explosion or something, anywhere from 3 to 5 miles away. So,
a lot of viewers, Stephanie Avila, saying that this definitely rattled her windows. She first thought it was thunder and was really shocked by how loud it was, she's saying. And then Vanessa says she lives just down the road from this ExxonMobil plant, says it shook her house and windows as well, and obviously she's praying for everyone, she's telling us, as we all are, hoping the situation is not worse than we think so far. All right, this is important information. We reported that there was no shelter in place. The situation is evolving now. City of Baytown has tweeted out an update from the ExxonMobil Baytown facility. I'm going to read it to you. They say the fires in the unit that contains polypropylene material. Exxon has asked that a shelter in place be issued west of its plant and south of 330. Exxon advised that this is out of an abundance of caution. So now the situation has changed. There is a shelter. Exxon has requested a shelter in place be issued. Reiterating, it is west of the plant and south of 330. Those of you who live in the area will likely know what we're talking about here. And again, Baytown, the city of Baytown reiterating that it is Exxon that is asking for this, and they are doing this as out of abundance of caution. So if you live west of this plant and south of 330, you're advised to shelter in place and take the precautions you normally would during these types of situations. Let's see here. Comments. Let's see what people are saying online. So now a viewer, I'm just scrolling through your comments here live, guys, so bear with me as I read through them. A viewer watching us, Alyssa Brito, tells us that this happened around 10:30 in the morning, and she's saying her husband was in the plant 10 feet from where it blew up. So I don't know if the desk can hear me or they're watching. It'd be interesting to reach out to Alyssa and hopefully see if her husband's okay and get more information from someone who may have actually been on the ground. She's telling us that this situation sort of unfolded at 10:30 this morning, that her husband was actually in that Baytown ExxonMobil facility 10 feet from where it blew up. So obviously we're hoping her husband is okay. Let me scroll through these comments. When we first broke in here on social media, on our social media platforms, we told you there was no shelter in place. That is the information. Now the information has definitely changed. There is a shelter in place now that has been issued via tweet. Baytown, the city of Baytown, letting folks know that there is a shelter in place that has been recommended by Exxon, and that is for those living, working west of the plant and south of 330. And again, we want to reiterate, Exxon says they're just doing this out of an abundance of caution. I'd be interested to know what exactly is burning, and Exxon also giving us a little bit more information about that. They say that the fire, where the fire burning is burning the unit that contains polypropylene material, polypropylene. So maybe we can find out. I'm going to try to do some research here on my phone and see what exactly polypropylene material is, what it's used for, and what potential hazards it might have when burning and released into the air. Polypropylene. I'm monitoring social media as well as we continue to follow this breaking news. Our reporter Josh Marshall, who is en route, should be arriving shortly on the ground there at the Exxon plant, saying that the Baytown Olefins plant began operations in 1979. And he is saying, this is Josh Marshall, our reporter covering this story on the ground, that this is one of the largest ethylene plants in the world, and that is obviously in Baytown, Texas. Air 11 still live over the scene. You're seeing those pictures. You can now get a better look as they zoomed out a bit of their efforts to put that fire out. But again, that fire shooting significantly high into the sky, and that thick black smoke continuing to burn. We now know that the unit that is burning contains polypropylene material, and that the biggest news that we want you to know if you're just joining us, if you have loved ones in the area, is that a shelter in place has been issued, and that is for those working, living west of this plant and south, again, of 330. Exxon also wanting folks to know that this is out of an abundance of caution. Local law enforcement officials, we are continuing to speak to them. We reached out to the sheriff, Ed Gonzalez, Harris County Sheriff, and they say they are monitoring the situation closely as this develops. And we still don't know what exactly happened, what went wrong in this unit that caused what viewers are reporting as explosions. We've had viewers calling into the newsroom. One viewer in particular says they work behind the plant in an office building, and that when that explosion happened, it shook their entire office building and definitely rattled windows. And we're hearing a lot of this from viewers watching us right now on social media, and all of them recounting the same sort of experience: a loud explosion, rattled windows, and just feeling it from about a mile away.
Real quick, I know some of you may have had some questions of what you need to be doing when there is a shelter-in-place issued. I just dropped in a link to our website that has an article describing what instructions you should follow when sheltering in place.
And what are some of those things do folks usually do during shelters in place?
Let me just go and read over some
Sure.
of them. Bring your family and pets inside. Lock the doors, close the windows, air vents, and fireplace dampers. Turn off all fans, air conditioning, and forced air heating systems. Take your emergency supply kit unless you have reason to believe it has been contaminated, which is probably not a case here. But go to an interior room with few windows if possible. Just some of the things you need to do in order to when you are sheltering in place.
And again, that shelter in place, not a widespread shelter in place for the city of Baytown. It is just for those that are living or working west of the plant and south of 330. So that's important for folks to know. Scrolling through some of these comments. Vivian Callie saying that she works at a small radio station down the street from the explosion, and she's saying that she received an automated call just now from the city of Baytown to shelter in place. Likely that Vivian is working west of the plant and south of 330. That is the only area that we're being told where a shelter in place has been issued and recommended by the ExxonMobil facility and the city of Baytown.
At this time, and some of you are asking if we've had any reports of injuries, and no, we have not received any reports at this time. The only thing we've received is that there is a shelter in place.
Yes, that has been the situation from the very beginning. That is the good news here. No injuries reported, and that the situation is being handled internally. The Exxon facility itself working hard to put out this fire. We do have a little more information about that we got via tweet from the city of Baytown about what is actually burning, what was in that unit, and we know it's polypropylene. And I'm just doing a quick Google search here, and I'm going to read what I'm seeing here. It's a material that's used in all sorts of industries, in the automotive industry, sort of a thermoplastic polymer that is used in a variety of methods, and that is what's burning. The Harris County Office of Emergency Management also tweeting as the situation develops, clarifying what it means to shelter in place. Their recent tweet says shelter in place means to stay indoors, keep doors and windows closed, turn off the air conditioning, and they are letting the public know that Exxon is conducting air monitoring and will advise when the danger has passed. But again, as far as we know, that shelter in place is not a widespread shelter in place for the entire city of Baytown, mainly folks living west, anyone living working in the area west of the plant and south of 330.
Once again, I'm going to show you, I'm going to keep the Air 11 shot up. I'm also going to show you some of the viewer video that we received earlier when this news first broke. This is a shot from the ground of a viewer driving by. You can see how there's some pretty large and intense flames coming from the plant.
That viewer appears is not very far at all. I'm not sure what road that is, but a pretty impressive look at, I'm assuming, moments right after that explosion that people are reporting to have felt. You see the fire appears to be more widespread in that viewer video, but still burning significantly in that Air 11 live video on the left of your screen. I'm looking here. A couple of viewers saying that no one knows yet what product is burning. We actually do know. That is polypropylene. That is what Exxon is telling us, that the unit that is burning contains polypropylene. And viewers now sharing that information too as they continue to comment here. Folks asking whether that material is dangerous when it burns. Exxon has not told us either way at this point, but it's clear that out of an abundance of caution, and those are their words, they're asking folks who live west of that facility to shelter in place, west and south of 330, to stay put, stay where you are until you get further information from them and information from us that it is safe to leave your home or your place of work. Some viewers asking if there's any way to shut off whatever's fueling that flame. That's a great question. I assume if it were that simple, they would have already done it and this fire would be out. But clearly, that polypropylene, whatever's in that tank, whatever else might be in that unit, continues to burn. There's still something there that is burning and shooting those black plumes of smoke high up into the sky. Continuing to read your comments here. Questions, you can send them our way. Angel Torres appears to be a employee at the ExxonMobil plant. He says he works there and they're sheltered in place, and wherever he was, he felt the building rock pretty badly after what many are describing as an explosion. I'm hearing our assignment desk discussing what they're getting from officials as we're on the air on social media here with this news, and it sounds like Exxon is doing an accounting, is trying to figure out, make sure all of its employees are safe and accounted for. Early on they told us there were no injuries reported. We hope it stays that way, but it sounds like Exxon is working to make sure that they have all the people there that were at the plant, they have them all accounted for and everyone is safe. So if you have a family member or loved one that you know works at the Exxon plant, if you haven't heard from them yet, not to worry. So far, the plant telling us that they don't believe there are any injuries, no injuries reported, but they are working to get a better count and a more accurate count to make sure they can account for everyone who was in that facility at the time. Scrolling through social media here. Let's reset the scene here. We know there are two, if you're just joining us online here, you're looking at live pictures from Air 11 of a fire burning at the ExxonMobil Baytown complex. We know there's a shelter in place for those that are living west of the plant and south of 330. And this situation started around 10:30 in the morning. That's what we're getting from viewer reports. They felt some sort of explosion. And then this fire, this large black plume of smoke. We know there are two fires burning at that facility. Two main points to emphasize: no injuries reported, and that there is a shelter in place, but it's not widespread. It is just for those west of the plant and south of 330. ExxonMobil is tweeting, and I want to read you their tweet. This is just coming in, something they've just tweeted out, the actual facility. A fire has occurred at our Baytown olefins plant, and our fire team is working to extinguish the fire. We are conducting personnel accounting. Our first priority remains the safety of people, including our employees, contractors, and the community. Again, this is a tweet coming from the facility. As a precaution, our industrial hygiene staff is conducting air quality monitoring at the site and at the fence line, and we are cooperating with regulatory agencies. We regret any disruption or inconvenience this incident may have caused the community. So let's break down that tweet. Again, more specifically, this happening at the Baytown olefins plant in Baytown. We know that their fire teams are working to extinguish the fire. It doesn't sound like they're having officials or firefighters from other agencies come in to assist at this time. And if you have family members who work in the area, friends who work at that plant, they are working to conduct personnel accounting. So far, we're told there have been no injuries, and all people are accounted for. But again, they're clearly working on conducting that personnel accounting to triple check and make sure that that is indeed accurate. And for those in the maybe not at the plant, obviously you're probably concerned about air quality. Maybe you see that thick black plume of smoke from where you are, from your home, and you're wondering what's in the air. The plant telling us that they're conducting air quality monitoring at the site and at the fence line to make sure the air quality remains safe for folks in the area. Again, the shelter in place, though, has been issued out of an abundance of caution. Those are their words, not ours, an abundance of caution, and that is for the west of this facility and south of 330. So if you're watching us on social media and you have not sheltered in place and you're west of the plant and south of 330, it's a good idea to do that now until whatever danger there is passes. What am I seeing on the left there? Or that, what am I seeing?
This is a shot from our crew heading to the scene.
Is that smoke that we see up there?
It looked like it might be. I'm going to go ahead and switch this over so you can guys see what we're seeing.
So Josh Marshall, our reporter, is on the way to the scene with his photographer Sergio Soto. I'm not sure how far they're out, but there you see them en route to that facility. And I'm not sure if that.
I guess I can
tell
tell for sure if that's the
I can't tell you
the
if
smoke.
I can't tell you for sure if that dark cloud you see towards on the high part of the screen, if that's part of the smoke or maybe just a cloud. But either way, they're en route and they should be arriving shortly. On the right, you see the view live right now from Air 11, and again, that fire showing really no signs of being put out. It continues to burn. And we know it is polypropylene. It's a unit that contained polypropylene that is burning. What we still haven't heard from Exxon is what caused this to explode, what caused this to catch fire. And really the plant hasn't used the word explosion yet either, so we should proceed with caution with that. But we're getting that as a description from viewers who are in the area, and even those from people who worked on the plant who are commenting here on our social media stream. I'm going to look at some of the comments here coming in. Again, this is just my impressions from looking at it. The smoke maybe not burning as dark, as black as maybe 15-20 minutes ago. So perhaps a positive sign, but again, we don't know for sure. We know that Exxon telling us that it's their firefighting crews, firefighting teams working to put this fire out. There you see 2 tanks spraying water. That's from Air 11 on the right side of your screen. Just trying to, I'm seeing 3 or 4 tanks of water just blasting water onto this fire. These 2 fires, we're told, trying to put it out.
Yeah, before for a while there, we were only seeing the one tank, trying to contain the fire, but they definitely have much more water on it now.
Scrolling through comments here. Carrie Murray Adderhold is watching us on social media. Carrie, thanks for watching, and she's saying, she's asking God to take care of her son because he's an Exxon firefighter. Likely one of the firefighters there blasting water onto these fires, trying to put it out, and hopefully everyone stays safe out there.
Yeah, Air 11 showing some of the fire crews that have responded to the scene to assist with tackling this fire. And then on the left-hand side, you see our crew on the ground. You can kind of start to see a little bit towards the left-hand side of that picture, the plume of smoke coming from the flyer.
Do we know how far they're out?
I can't tell for sure how far away they're being kept, but that just from what they're shot, they're in the left-hand corner. In fact, I'm going to take their shot full screen for a second here so people can see a little bit better.
And if you're watching us on social media and you're in the area, maybe you felt the explosion or you felt something when this situation started to unfold, comment. We're reading through your comments. Let us know what you experienced, what you felt, what you heard, and recount what you may have experienced. If you're just joining us, I want to recap the scene. We know some of you tune in and then leave or just join us a little late on this stream whenever you can. We know there are 2 fires burning at the ExxonMobil Baytown complex. That is in Baytown. We know no injuries have been reported, and that Exxon telling us they're conducting a full personnel accounting of who is accounted for and make sure everyone's safe. I'm getting a note handed to me here, so bear with me. And checking in on our feed. Also, if you're watching us on social media, I'm told Exxon employees are watching our feed and checking in on our feed to tell their families they are okay. So if you perhaps have a family member who is at the Exxon facility, was working there this morning, and rightfully so, you're concerned about their safety and how they're doing, our team here at KHOU is sort of reading through these comments, following everything you're saying closely, and a lot of Exxon employees are actually checking in on our feed and trying to get the message to their families that they're safe, that they're okay, that they're accounted for. So might be a good opportunity to read through the comments and see if your loved one's name is there, because a lot of Exxon employees are using the KHOU 11 social media feed right now on this live coverage to let their families know they're okay. So a good resource for you if you can't get through to your loved one right now. And again, Exxon conducting a complete personnel accounting to make sure everyone is indeed accounted for. So far, no injuries that we can report. Earlier in the day, there was no shelter in place. That quickly changed about 15 to 20 minutes ago. There is a shelter in place now recommended by Exxon out of an abundance of caution. Those are their words, and they're recommending that folks shelter in place if they're west of the plant and south of 330. So if you're in that area, if you're watching us now and you're just hearing this, it's important to go ahead and shelter in place and follow law enforcement officials' directions. Earlier this morning, the Harris County Office of Emergency Management tweeting out that shelter in place means to stay indoors. It means to keep doors and windows closed, to turn off the air conditioning, and also letting us know, the Office of Emergency Management, that Exxon is conducting air monitoring and that they will advise when the danger has passed. We've spoken to the Harris County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, telling us that they are monitoring the situation closely, and also getting tons of viewer reports coming in both into our newsroom and just on social media here, you guys telling us live what's happening out there, saying that they heard several, several people saying they heard explosions, and one woman who says she works in an office building just behind this plant, definitely felt it, that it shook the entire building, and that it even rattled windows. Earlier, Jaime also mentioned if you don't know what shelter in place means, you don't know what that entails, we do have a link up, a web story up on khou.com that gives you step-by-step what you need to do during these types of situations. But we want to reiterate, it is only for those folks that are west of the plant, and we have a map up now to hopefully give you a better idea of what we're talking about here, west of that facility and south of 330. So if you're in an area that encompasses those two things, you need to shelter in place right now and stay sheltered in place until we hear otherwise from law enforcement officials.
We are working on a map that will kind of detail the area as far as what where the shelter in place extends to. But yes, we do have a link in the comments that if you have some questions about what to do during a shelter in place, there's a link that we have dropped into the comments that you can click on that will take you to khou.com with those instructions.
Just scrolling through some of the comments here, and again, Exxon employees actually at the facility right now are trying to reach their families on our feed. Alton Tutu Johnson is trying to let his family know. He's commented that he's an employee here at the Exxon plant, and he wants to let his family know that he is safe and that he is sheltering in place. So if you are a family member of Alton Johnson's, it's important for you to know that he is okay and he is sheltering in place. Reading through some of your comments here. One viewer telling us that she knows a family member who works there, and that earlier this morning around 8:45 he was sent home because of some gases in the air. So she's assuming things escalated. Clearly some situation did unfold. We know it happened around 10:30 in the morning. We're not sure what started this fire. We know from viewer reports that it's some sort of explosion they felt and experienced. Again, Exxon not using the word explosion, just saying that there are two fires at the facility, and that they involve a polypropylene unit. Reading through some of your comments, seeing if anyone else has checked in to try to let their families know they're okay. Again, that fire, again, and this is just my perspective from looking at the video with you guys live as we go through this together. The fire doesn't seem as dark, not as intense. Maybe the cloud of smoke not as intense in general. Again, flames still shooting up significantly high up that unit, but perhaps, fingers crossed, the situation is slowly getting under control. We know that outside fire agencies like Baytown are not involved in fighting this fire at this point. It is Exxon's own firefighters working to handle this situation internally. Did we just update that map? Is that the area?
Yes, the area in the green is the shelter-in-place area. As you can see, the red or kind of pinkish dot is the location of the plant, but the green, everybody in the green is under the shelter-in-place right now.
And is that live picture? Is that video on the left that I'm looking at? Is that our ground crew?
This is our ground crew. I can switch to that shot.
So it appears our ground crew has arrived on the scene, and Josh Marshall is the reporter there, working with photographer Sergio Soto. So I want to put, hopefully we can, yeah, there we go. That is live ground video now from our crew on the scene. They appeared to be pretty close. Hopefully they're keeping a safe distance, but you can see that is ground level, and you see flames shooting up and that black smoke still billowing. This is just my perspective, what I'm gauging from seeing the video with you. Yes, there's still a lot of flames, but earlier in the morning when we first broke in with this breaking news, it appeared that smoke was darker. That's on the left side of your screen. That's live pictures from our crew on the ground right now. On the right side of your screen, for those who live in the area, who have loved ones in the area, that is the shelter-in-place map that we put together for you guys. That it's a red dot, right? Am I looking? It's a red dot. That's
Correct.
Where the facility is. So that red dot is where that Baytown ExxonMobil facility is. To the left is west, obviously, and that is where the shelter-in-place has been ordered. West of the facility and south of 330. From that ground video on the left, you see those flames. Something is still burning there. The flames still continuing to shoot, almost like mini explosions. Just it continues to billow up, and we know it is polypropylene. That is the unit that caught fire, and we're working to learn more about what exactly that material is, and what, if any, dangers it causes when it burns high into the ground. Exxon did say that they are issuing the shelter in place out of an abundance of caution. We also know there is no external damage outside the facility, and on the left you see our crew on the ground has zoomed out. You can see how far away they are, keeping a safe distance. Obviously, we want our crews to be safe from the ExxonMobil plant, and as I mentioned earlier, that smoke definitely not as black and intense as it was before, but something continues to burn, and you can see that plume of smoke and where it's dissipating. We have new video.
This is a shot from
right?
Air 11, and you can see, I don't know if these are all the workers, I guess, that have been evacuated from the plant, I would think.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of people there on the road from what it looks like, right? So that is on your screen now is live pictures from Air 11. You can see you can see several ambulances. Is that right? There's at least 2 ambulances that I'm counting.
Correct.
Maybe 3, and a whole lot of law enforcement officials, or I don't know if those are plant workers, but there's a whole lot of people gathered out there. I guess it's good news to see that there's only 2 ambulances, and at this point we can't report that there are any injuries. We haven't been told one way or another. So far at last check with them, there are no injuries reported, but we know the facility is conducting personnel accounting to make sure everyone indeed is safe and accounted for. Now off screen I'm watching Josh Marshall get ready. I'm not sure, is he getting ready to go live for us or for air?
I believe it's for our noon show.
Okay, he's getting ready for noon.
He's getting ready to do a
he's
live
getting ready
report.
for noon. So we'll continue to follow this here on social media. For those of you who also want to watch on television, our reporter Josh Marshall is on the scene and should be getting ready to go live for us shortly. Or on the air now. We are also breaking into coverage right now on television. Can we put him on if he's breaking into TV? Yes. and viewers can hear him?
You should be hearing him now.
Okay, so that's Josh Marshall, our reporter on the ground.
That cracker has a capacity of 1.5 million tons per year, and this is where it feeds into what we're talking about inside this fire with the polypropylene section. The ethylene cracker provides ethylene feedstock to their new higher performance polyethylene lines that go over to their Mont Belvieu plastics plant that started back in 2017. There are approximately some 7,000 workers that Exxon has in these facilities spread out throughout Baytown. They began operations here at this Olefins plant at 3525 Decker Drive back in 1979, and it is one of the largest ethylene plants in the world. That fire, we cannot see a second fire from our vantage point. It looks like just one fire, and we have heard several reports of an explosion, but we have not heard any explosions. We just see this plume of smoke kind of rising straight up. Very, very calm winds. So where we are right here, we're not getting any smells or anything along those lines. We wanted to talk to a few people out here. We're still looking for employees who are coming out of the plants right now. But for now, we're going to run off, try to find some of them and get information about how this could have started, as well as making sure that everyone is out of this plant. The last information that Exxon BTA's Twitter account put out was that they were going through and making sure they had 100% accountability for all employees working inside of this plant, as well as making sure people are staying out of that shelter-in-place zone that is just northwest of the fire. Sherman, we'll go back to you for now. We're going to try to find some employees to figure this out.
You can hear me? So there you guys got our first live report on the ground from Josh Marshall, who arrived on scene, giving you a breakdown of how many employees work at this facility. We're not sure how many were there at the time that this fire happened. If we could split screen, if we could put that ground video up, that'd be great too. But recounting, a lot of questions on social media about what is burning, and we know that it's polypropylene. At least that's what was in the unit when this explosion happened, when this caught fire. And I've done a quick Google search while Josh was going live of what polypropylene is, and this is just from ExxonMobil's page. It's used in an assortment of products. It's a very well-known, popular chemical that is used in all sorts of things, from automotive products, consumer products, plastic packaging, all sorts of things that this material is used for. Clearly, there is maybe some concern that whatever's being sent up in the air could be hazardous to folks in and around the area. That's why they are limiting that shelter in place to west of the facility and south of 330. Before Josh took before we took Josh live, we saw Air 11 over the scene. We saw at least 2 ambulances there. Hopefully there, not to treat anybody that's injured. At this point, we know there are no injuries reported, and that the facility is working to account for all of their employees. So a little bit reassuring to see a small number of ambulances, because hopefully there's no need for them. Hopefully there are no injuries as this situation and fire continues to develop. I'm reading through some of your comments here. Christine saying that she lives not far south of 330, and she continues to watch that smoke. She's concerned about that. Other viewers telling us that, one viewer, Tim, telling us he works with this type of material, polypropylene, and he's seen terrible fires before, and that in his experience with these types of fires, you just have to let them burn out. They're not put out easily. Reading through your comments here, so bear with me. One viewer saying that he notices in the Air 11 video that it appears like a tower is burning, and hoping that doesn't tilt over but yeah, that flames are shooting up along the tower. If you're just joining our live stream, let's sort of recount what we know. The information continues to be fluid, but this is what we know so far. This is what we can confirm. Exxon telling us that there were 2 fires, excuse me, at their Baytown, ExxonMobil Baytown complex facility. Early on, we were told no injuries reported. As of now, that has not changed. And early on, we were told there was no shelter in place, but that has changed. There is a shelter in place in the area. You see that map on the right side of your screen. There's a shelter in place for folks living, working in and around the area west of that plant and south of 330. If you're seeing a black plume of smoke in the area and you're not around, you don't fit into those categories west of the plant and south of 330, then there is no need for you to shelter in place, although I would say it's not best to be out at all right now. So if you don't have to and you're seeing that smoke, you're close to it, it's probably best not to be out until we know exactly what we're dealing with. But that official shelter in place only for those west of the plant and south of 330. Several viewer reports coming in to our newsroom and on social media describing what they felt, that it rocked their buildings, it rocked their homes. One man saying he was at his mother's house, who lives just 1 mile from this facility, and they heard and felt that explosion. It shook their walls, rattled their windows. One viewer telling us it shook their entire office building. If you're in a safe area and you have video or experience some of this and you can safely send us some pictures, you do that. Send it to us at assignments@khu.com so we can get a better perspective of what's going on. You have Air 11 there on the left side of your screen.
That is correct.
That is a live photo, right? That's a live image, right?
This is live. When you can see, there's definitely a lot of crews on scene trying to put out the flames.
The response from when we first started Jaime to now, you can definitely see it's a larger firefighter response. So far we have not heard otherwise, but it is just Exxon firefighters. The facility is dealing with this internally, hoping they can handle this on their own. I'm sure other firefighting agencies are mobilized and ready to go if needed and if they're called upon. But just visually from the last, I don't know how long we've been on, maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes, but a lot more firefighting power trying to put this thing out. But that flame still shooting high up on that tower, and that smoke continues to burn. Harris County the Sheriff's Office, we've reached out to them. They're just telling us at this point they're monitoring the situation. It seems like most of, if not all, the reaction to this is happening at the Exxon facility. They're the ones dealing with trying to put this out. We know it was a polypropylene tank, a polypropylene unit that somehow caught fire. Worth noting that Exxon has not called this an explosion. They have not used that word at all. That is what witnesses who felt the situation unfold, that is the word they are using. Scrolling through your comments here, so bear with us. A lot of the sentiment on Facebook just concern because of what we've seen in the Houston area the last few months. This is not our first go around with this type of situation. You'll recall the ITC plant, another plant in Crosby that also had a fire that burned significantly. So Houston, not a stranger, unfortunately, to seeing these dark plumes of smoke rising above the city. And so fortunately, we're a city that knows how to respond to these sorts of things. We're an area that knows how to deal with these things, and the right steps are taking place to get the situation under control. Although those black plumes of smoke that maybe you're seeing from far away may seem a little scary, Exxon telling us there is no shelter in place across the area. It is simply in a contained area west of the ExxonMobil facility and south of 330, and you can see that area highlighted in green on your map. That is where, if you live in that area that is green, you are being advised and instructed to shelter in place until the situation passes. Reading through, Adriana Rivera asking, have there been any injuries or anything reported? My husband works there. Adriana, we can tell you that there are no injuries reported at this time, and that's been the story from the beginning. I can tell you Exxon is working to account for everyone at the facility who was at the facility this morning. We've not heard back from them as to numbers, but so far I can tell you no injuries reported yet. And a lot of employees are actually checking in here on the social media feed, trying to let their families know they're okay and accounted for and sheltering in place. Jordan again asking us about injuries, saying some people that his father, who works at the facility, saw people getting carried by ambulance. Again, we can't confirm that. The facility telling us there are no injuries at this time. But again, a lot of this information in these breaking news situations are fluid, and they tend to develop quickly over time. So that situation may change, although we hope that no injury count stays the same. Cheryl, Mercedes is here to talk to us about some quick digging you've been doing into OSHA.
Yeah, so OSHA actually has not come up with any violations yet for this specific location of the Exxon facility there in Baytown. However, the TCEQ has fined that specific facility $900,000 just in the last 10 years. And the thing is, in 2009, just in one incident, that was $500,000 in violations there. Like I said, they have plenty that we're looking through right now, but this is just in the last 10 years from the TCEQ. Now, the EPA in the last 5 years has fined that location just under $20,000, and there was a case that also resulted in an additional penalty of $2,500, and that's just from the EPA. So we are looking into this. We're looking back way into the 90s at this point. There are some violations there from the TCEQ as well, with additional money that goes into the millions.
I don't know if we would know this yet, but do we know what types of situations, what they did wrong to incur those penalties or anything like that?
This is all air quality violations.
Okay.
So we're talking everything that has to do with the air we breathe in that area. And we also do want to note that there's just over 37,000 people living in that area. You know, it's a big petrochemical area, but we do have a lot of people, and I know you've mentioned some folks are writing in that they've felt shakes or their windows rattling and that sort of thing. So we do have residents living in that area, and of course they're concerned.
You said 37,000 people
Yes,
just in and
just
around the
over
area?
37,000.
And the last OSHA, or the last fine that they incurred was when? Do we know?
It was 2000, as we noted, 2015, I believe, was EPA.
Okay, an
Yeah,
EPA fine.
EPA
So it has a
violation.
history of, this
Yeah,
company has
and
a
this
history of
was what they
issues.
labeled as a high-risk violation there, and of course it was a violation of the Clean Air Act.
Okay.
So these are all air violations that we're looking at.
So our I team will continue to work on this,
Absolutely.
right?
We've got a team working behind the scenes as well as I speak now to look into additional cases or anything else that may have come up involving Exxon there at Decker, because you know there's more than one facility in that
Yeah.
location, so we're narrowing it down for you.
Do we know if it's more than others, or, I mean, are those numbers startling, I guess? Are they higher
Well,
than usual?
the more the millions,
Yeah.
it is definitely, especially since you're looking just at the last 2 decades. So we're looking specifically, as you said, into what exactly happened behind the scenes that may have sparked the violations.
Great. Well, thank you, Cheryl. I know
Oh,
you'll
absolutely.
continue to follow it.
For sure.
Back on the screen, you still see that evacuation zone. Cheryl offering important information. There's 37,000 people that live in and around that facility, many of which are probably sheltering in place. Again, that shelter in place is west of the facility and south of 330. I'm checking Twitter here. A new tweet issued by Goose Creek Consolidated Independent School District, and they're saying, due to a fire at ExxonMobil, the city of Baytown has issued a shelter in place again for areas west of the plant and south of 330. South of 330, I should say. The district making clear that this includes the Goose Creek Service Center, Robert E. Lee High School, Peter Highland, Impact ECH, San Jacinto Elementary, Travis Elementary, and Baytown Junior. Again, it's still summertime, so there are no kids in school. Maybe teachers are back at school getting ready for the school year. So if you have a loved one who works at any of these Goose Creek ISD facilities, they are likely sheltering in place because they do encompass that area that has been recommended and where a shelter-in-place order has been issued. Scrolling through your comments here, and you see in that Air 11 video, that's live, correct?
That is
Correct.
Okay. So you still see, I mean, the situation has been ongoing now for close to an hour. maybe a little more, and I'm seeing less flames, at least from this vantage point, or maybe we're just a little far out, but that thick black cloud of smoke continues to billow up into the sky, and that's really the scary thing for folks in and around this area. As we've said all morning long, we've seen the situation time and time again over the last few months in 2019 here in our area, and there's some apprehension, understandably so, about what is being sent into the sky, air quality, and we know that just from some preliminary digging our I-team has done, and they continue to do as we speak, there have been several EPA air quality fines and violations, and they're continuing to sift through that information. Cheryl telling us that in one case they've paid several $1 million. So that's something they're continuing to follow, and obviously we will bring you more information on those violations as this breaking news develops. A lot of folks asking us about their loved ones on social media, concerned that they haven't heard from folks, from their loved ones at the plant. We want to reiterate important information. There are no injuries reported at this time, but that the plant is again conducting accounting of their personnel to make sure that indeed stays that way. A lot of employees are sheltering in place at the facility, though, and we know that because a lot of them are checking in on our social media page on this live stream. They're commenting and wanting to somehow get the message out to their family that they're safe, that they're okay, that they're accounted for, and that they are sheltering in place. So maybe they don't have their phone on them, or maybe they're unable to call in the particular situation they're in, but they are trying to get the message out to their loved ones, and a lot of them doing it we've seen here on the KHOU11 live stream. Reading through your comments, so bear with us here as we continue to see those live pictures of Air 11 over the scene. I'm counting 4 or 5 water cannons just spraying, well, 3 from that vantage point, spraying this fire, trying to put it out, but it does continue to burn. A lot of the questions, a lot of the concern on social is what is burning. We know it's polypropylene. That is what Exxon is telling us, and that not telling us what it could cause or any potential dangers to it, but clearly enough of a concern that out of caution, again, that's what they're saying, an abundance of caution, they did feel the need to issue that shelter in place. Joshua Burns telling us that polypropylene is extremely difficult to put out. Clearly we're seeing that now, and I've heard and read a lot of you all familiar who live in this area telling us the same thing, that and that explains why this fire is still going on maybe an hour and a half after it started, because we're told the situation started around 10:30. This material is difficult to extinguish once it ignites. Reading through your comments here, a lot of you guys telling us you have family who lives right next to the ExxonMobil facility. There's a map, a better perspective of what we're talking about, what areas we're talking about. We know there are several schools in Goose Creek ISD that are in the area. The district telling us to, reiterating that there is a shelter in place in several of their schools because of where they fall on the map. Kids not in sessions, summer break still ongoing. That's some good news. But it sounds like, based on that tweet, that administration staff, teachers may be back getting ready for the school year to begin. And so if you know anyone that works in schools that we rattled off earlier, and I'll repeat those to you right now, we're talking about the Goose Creek Service Center, Robert E. Lee High School, Peter E. Highland, Impact East Early Childhood Center, San Jacinto Elementary, Travis Elementary, and Baytown Junior. If you have loved ones who work in those facilities, in those Goose Creek ISD buildings, they do fall in that shelter-in-place zone that you see on the map, and that is west of the Baytown facility and south of 330. I can also tell you we have a reporter on the scene. We heard from him about 15 minutes ago. Josh Marshall is gathering more information on the ground and also shooting video from the ground that hopefully we can switch over here in a little bit. I'm seeing a ground video that we want to show you guys, where it seems like perhaps the situation improving a little bit. Hey, Jaime, can we switch over, just see some of that ground video that Josh
Yes, here's
this
a
photographer
here's a
shooting.
full screen.
So there you go. That is from the ground. I'm assuming at least a couple miles away. So not terribly close for their own safety, but you see perhaps the smoke dissipating somewhat, perhaps the situation improving, but we have not heard from Exxon an update on their firefighting situation. We do know that they are handling this internally, which may not be all that unusual initially. I'm sure other firefighting agencies have been mobilized, perhaps ready to move in if Exxon says the word, but at this point we're being told, and we've been told from the beginning, that they are working to handle this internally.
It doesn't look like the flames have even grown too much since the start.
No. And like I said, that I don't know if we can put it up in a few minutes, but that impressive viewer video, some of the most impressive video we've seen is from a viewer who appeared to be just driving down the highway when he caught what was happening. That's when it seemed just very intense. I'm assuming, and this is just an assumption again, just based on what we're seeing, likely shortly after whatever explosion and whatever happened to cause this to ignite, you can see a lot of big fireballs just shooting way up into the sky. We're not seeing that right now. We're not seeing that anymore, and that perhaps is some really good news. We've had a viewer telling us who worked in an office building close to the facility, not the viewer who shot this video. But we've had viewers who were probably in these similar scenarios, working not too far, and they've told us that they felt an explosion, that it shook their office buildings, and it definitely rattled windows. So if you're in the area and it's safe for you to be out, you're not in that shelter-in-place zone, and you have any video, please send it to us. We'd love to get a better vantage point from what you all experienced around 10:30 this morning. Ashley Bernal is watching us here on social. She says, I live in front of it. She says, I live in front of it. We felt the house shake and a big boom. And her big concern, she says, she's very worried about what they're inhaling and what we're about to inhale, she says. A concern that a lot of the folks in that area share. Cheryl Mercedes, our I-Team investigative reporter, saying 37,000 people live in the immediate area of that ExxonMobil plant. So I'm sure every one of those 37,000 people have that on their minds. Ashley, concerned about what they are breathing and what's billowing up into the sky. Jessica Del Rio, for those worrying about their loved ones who work at the ExxonMobil plant, she says she was able to speak to a lot of her friends who work at the plant, and so far she says all her friends are accounted for. So that is positive news. Just scrolling through some of your comments here as they continue to come in. What did they say? What did he say?
Something about 15 minutes out.
Press conference or?
Let me find out for you.
Okay. Trying to confirm whether a press conference is happening soon. I believe that's just what I heard shouted in the newsroom, that a press conference may be set to begin in about 15 minutes. But let me confirm that, and we'll let you know shortly. I'm continuing to scroll through your comments here, so when you hear the silence, I'm just trying to respond to what you guys are telling us and to answer your questions as best we can. Jessica Perez, one of our viewers, telling us that a lot of the Exxon employees are on the side of the road. They're not in the facility anymore, and that they have no phones to call their families. So again, a lot of employees trying to reach out. We've seen a lot of employees try to reach out and confirm that they're okay via social media on this social media stream. Reading through your comment. What was that, Jaime? Was it did he say what the 15-minute queue was, or?
No, we actually have a second crew headed to the scene. Okay. So hopefully we'll be able to get more information.
Okay. So Josh Marshall is on the ground there, but what I'm just being told is we have a second crew, photographer, reporter, heading to cover this story from all angles and get you the latest information. They're on the ground. They're on the ground as well. You see that Air 11 vantage point at this point. You can see just what they're blasting onto that fire, And if you've been joining us for the last 15, 20 minutes, maybe longer, you can see the flames are not what they used to be. They're not what we saw in that viewer video. They're still there, but it's not that impressive fireball that we saw early on after what viewers are calling an explosion, or witnesses are calling an explosion. A lot of people asking, I'm told, to see that map, concerned about where that shelter in place has been issued. And there you see it, that red dot in the middle to the right of that green box. That is the facility in question, the ExxonMobil Baytown complex. The green area shaded in is where that shelter in place has been issued. That shelter in place is not widespread, as you can see. It is west, anything west of the facility and south of 330. So if you are looking at this map and you're in that green area or anywhere near that plant in that green area, you have been advised and told to shelter in place until you get more information, until it is safe to do so. Important to note, we've been reiterating this throughout the morning, that Exxon saying that this shelter in place was issued out of an abundance of caution. A lot of people wondering what is in the air, and Exxon telling us they have a special hygiene team, is what they called it in their tweet, who that is conducting air quality monitoring at the facility, along the fence line, and in the area to triple check and confirm that the air is safe and that there is no danger to the public. Hilda Rosales is asking us, what about all those flares that she's seeing? Can it cause more explosions? We don't know the answer to that, Hilda, but from the looks of it, I mean, there's several firefighters out on the scene that are working to contain this. So hopefully the answer to your question is no. Jessica Del Rio commenting that my father's in a neighboring plant off West Baker. He's not sure if he needs to be in the shelter. Well, Jessica, you could tell your father, if you can reach him, that if that plant, I'm not sure which plant you're talking about, but if that plant is west of the ExxonMobil Baytown complex and south of 330, then he definitely needs to shelter in place, and that is coming from the city of Baytown and Exxon. Jasmine asking if any freeways are closed. We're not hearing of any freeway closures or road closures at this point, but that is something we can look into. Slim Betancourt asking, do you know what unit it is? And we know it's a polypropylene unit that had this situation. Danielle Marie commenting just now, she's watching us on social. My boyfriend works there. He was 150 yards from the explosion. We are so thankful that he is okay, and so are a lot of the guys that work there, praying that no one was hurt or killed. We're all praying for that it stays that way, Danielle, and of course we're happy that your boyfriend is doing okay. If you're just joining us here on social media, we've been live streaming for more than an hour now on this breaking news. This started around 10:30 this morning. 2 fires at the ExxonMobil Baytown complex. We've been showing you live pictures since we cut into on social media. You can see Air 11 on the left of your screen, now full screen. I'm seeing fewer flames and more water tanks, which is always a good combination when you're trying to put these things out. So perhaps that's definitely a smaller plume of smoke, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. You can tell it looked like it's starting to kind of die down a bit, especially when you compare it to some of the earlier video we saw from that was sent to us by viewers, where just the flames just looked this huge.
Yeah. So that's a live look. You're taking a look at that right now, so that's reassuring. Still seeing some flames there, but that plume of smoke nowhere near the intensity it was earlier. I'm seeing more smoke than fire, and I'm no expert, but I would say that's a good thing. No, there was no shelter in place early on when we started our coverage here, breaking coverage on social media and on our social platforms. That situation changed about 20 minutes in. There is now a shelter in place that's been issued. We've been harping on it all night long, but bear with us, all morning long, I should say. There's a shelter in place that is west of the Baytown facility, the ExxonMobil Baytown facility, and south of 330. And that's why we're keeping that map up there for you, so you can see exactly what we're talking about. If you fall in that green zone, you're asked to shelter in place. Most people who live in this area, I assume, have lived there a while and know what shelter in place implies and what it means. If not, we do have an article with step-by-step details. That is on KHOU.com. You can access it on the KHOU app as well. Is that right, Hyman?
That is correct. I also dropped a link to it in the comments of this live stream.
Great.
So you'll be able to get all the instructions there.
Some basic information, though, about a shelter in place that the County Office of Emergency Management has tweeted out is the following. They say shelter in place. It means to stay indoors, that to keep doors and windows closed. Important to turn off the air conditioning, which in this heat I guess could be difficult, but you definitely got to do that if you're sheltering in place. And the county also reiterating what Exxon is telling us, that they are conducting air monitoring, and they too will advise the public when any danger has passed. Checking Twitter here, because we did check with Sheriff Ed Gonzalez earlier this morning. Nothing on his Twitter page yet, but when we did speak to him, the sheriff's office says that they are monitoring the situation. And at this point, it's been Exxon firefighters, Exxon staff at the plant itself that have been working to extinguish these fires. Early on, we got viewer reports. Many of you probably experienced the same thing. One viewer telling us that she works behind this plant in an office building, that they heard an explosion, they felt an explosion, that it shook their entire office building, and that it rattled their windows. I can't tell you how many times I've read that in the comment stream today. Many of you experiencing the same thing, even a couple miles away.
Yeah, I know some had commented as much anywhere from 4 to 5 miles away that they were feeling, I guess what they said was an explosion.
Yeah, and again, viewers describing this, witnesses describing this as an explosion. That word has not been used thus far by Exxon, but I presume when we get more information, that will likely be what we hear. Alejandra Vitella telling us that her husband works there. But interesting here, she says he was sent home as soon as this situation, this fire started. Danielle commenting again just now, asking, I might have missed it, but do we know how long the shelter in place is going to last? My girls and I would really like for all of the guys stuck there to go home to their worried families. We have not heard, Danielle, how long this shelter in place might last. There's no specific timetable that we've heard, but as soon as we get that information, of course, or as soon as that shelter in place is lifted for that particular area, we'll pass it along on social and on our on-air platforms. Michael Castro telling us, if he is 10 miles west, do I need to be concerned? Michael, to be honest with you, I don't want to give you a yes or no answer either way, but we can work to find that information out. All we can tell you is what we're hearing from law enforcement and from officials, is that if you live or work west of the facility and south of 330, I'm not sure how much distance we're talking, you need to heed that shelter in place that's been issued and stay inside. And Michael, we do, going back to Michael, I can see you commenting here, if you're within that green box that we have up on the screen, then you need to shelter in place. If you're not in that green area, I presume that it is safe to be about. But again, if you're anywhere near the Baytown area and you're seeing smoke in the sky, again, I'm no expert. I'm sure you would say the same thing, Jaime. I would not stay inside. There's no need to be outside until we get a better idea of what's burned and what impacts that may have. We do know air quality testing is happening right now, and again, you can see from the video on the left-hand side of your screen, there is no damage externally outside the facility. So whatever explosion or whatever may have happened is self-contained. And the more time goes by, that looks better and better, I would say, compared to what we've seen throughout the morning.
And I guess in some of the fires that we've had, when just even over not just this year but over the years, that it looks like they've kind of like have it contained, and as long as it's not spreading, and sometimes they almost have to let
it burn out.
Let it burn out.
Yeah. And maybe that's what we're seeing, that it's as time goes on, it's burning out, because we're definitely seeing less flames, and that plume is not as widespread, not as wide as it was. If it weren't black, it could almost look like the white smoke that we see billowing from those towers usually.
When you're watching it burn off.
Yeah. Again, Exxon did tweet out updates. We haven't received an update from them in some time, but reiterating to us that early on that it was their fire team that is going to work to extinguish this fire, so no outside fire agencies involved in fighting this thing. Telling us in a statement that their priority remains the safety of their people, including employees, contractors, and the community. And as a precaution, they're saying that this is only as a precaution, their industrial hygiene staff is conducting air quality monitoring at the site and at the fence line, and that they are cooperating with regulatory agencies. We were speaking to Cheryl Mercedes earlier, and we know that they've had some issues with regulatory agencies, several $1 million in fines in the past for air quality, both from the EPA and the TCEQ and other regulatory agencies. So we'll see what comes of this latest incident. The important thing now, the focus, I guess, is putting out this fire and making sure all employees are safe and accounted for. Exxon has told us all morning long they are working to conduct personnel accounting of all their employees who are at the facility, and hopefully we can continue to report that there were no injuries. And of course, Exxon also apologizing for any disruption or inconvenience that this is causing the community. Just going through some tweets here. A couple school district information that I'm checking on here on my email and via Twitter. Sheldon ISD telling us that they're asking all students to stay inside for practice as a precaution. Goose Creek ISD that we told you about earlier, who sent out several facilities that are in that shelter-in-place zone, say they do not have summer school in session, so there are no students in those buildings, and that the order doesn't affect that many people. But they did want to send out the tweet to make sure staff who are in those buildings are aware of what's going on. So if you have family in Goose Creek ISD, then that's important information for you to pass along to your families. If you haven't heard from them, perhaps that is why they are sheltering in place, because they do fall in that zone. Sheldon ISD, however, says they do have students in their school buildings, and they don't fall in the actual they don't fall actually in the shelter-in-place zone, but they are asking all students to stay inside for practice, just as a precaution. Guys, we are seeing your comments, so we want to make sure you know we are reading what you're telling us, and a lot of you concerned about why we're not showing Bold and the Beautiful on air, because we are on air and online as well. We just want to let you know that if we need to stay on any longer and Bold and the Beautiful is preempted, we're going to let you guys know when you can see Bold and the Beautiful. But as long as this situation is ongoing and there is a risk or a safety threat to a portion of our viewing audience, it's important for us to stay on air. So we will let you know when Bold and the Beautiful will be on if we have to preempt it and it is not on KHOU. We are working to get a pulmonary expert to speak to, so we're hoping to talk to him. He will be speaking with our on-air crews around 12:45. We will also speak to him shortly after, so I want to let you guys know we're working on that to talk about what possible impacts of breathing this stuff in may have. A lot of you guys saying that, a lot of you guys who live in the area really saying you guys need us to stay on and are grateful for the coverage, so we appreciate that, and we will stay on. We'll continue to follow this both on air and here on our social media platforms as long as is necessary and until any danger or potential danger passes. Danielle Marie, who has been a source of information for us throughout this, commenting, letting us know what's going on with her family. She's telling us that they're sending all the employees home, that she just got a message from her boyfriend and that he is on his way home. So again, that's coming from a viewer, Danielle Marie. We're hoping to confirm that with Exxon to let us know whether they are sending folks home. We know they were doing a personnel accounting to try to figure out how many people exactly were working there, if they're all accounted for, if they're all safe, and at this point, from the very beginning, we've been told there are no injuries reported. I want to discuss the fact that we're seeing some of you saying that on the social media feed that you're hearing word of 2 possible injuries. We see what you're saying, and we are working to confirm that. But at this point, Exxon, the official word from Exxon and from officials are that there are no injuries. But we are listening to you. We're hearing what you have to say, and we are working to confirm that information. As soon as we get any updated information on any injury totals, of course, we will pass that along to you on air and on our social media platforms here. Just reading through some of the comments here. One of the viewers is asking if we can post a link to the map. I'm sure that's already up on our website, probably.
Yeah, and I just added that link again into the comments, so it should be right there towards the top, and you can access that. It has information about the map itself, our latest updates, and also how to shelter in place as well.
Good. So there's plenty of information that you can access on khou.com from how to shelter in place, the latest information as well. And we're trying to recap. Some of you are saying that the information is repetitive, but I want to reiterate to those in and around this area that maybe just tuning in, this information is important to them, their families. And it's important to recap every once in a while, especially on social, what is happening for those who may have missed it or maybe just tuning in. So let's recap once more what we know so far. We know there was a fire at the ExxonMobil Baytown complex shortly after 10:30 this morning. The facility not using the word explosion, but several people here on social throughout this live stream and viewers who have called into the newsroom, one in particular who says she worked behind the plant, say that when that explosion happened, it shook her office building and rattled all the windows, probably pretty frightening to experience. From the beginning, we've heard no injuries reported at all, although we hope that number doesn't change as we are working to confirm possible reports that there may have been 2, but that is not confirmed, and we're working to confirm that with Exxon and with law enforcement and first responders. Ed Gonzalez, we reached out to him from the beginning. He says the county is monitoring the situation. The Office of Emergency Management also tweeting, actively involved in monitoring the situation, letting folks know what it means to shelter in place. Now, what's changed over time is early on, as soon as we broke in on social media, on our platforms here, there was no shelter in place that had been issued. There is a shelter in place now, and that's the map that we've been trying to maintain up, keep it on the screen. A lot of you guys are asking for us to stay on there, for it to stay on there. That red dot is the ExxonMobil Baytown complex. That is where all of this is unfolding. Right now, on the left of your screen, is the live pictures from Air 11 of their fight against this fire. But on the right side of your screen, you see that map, and anything in that green is where a shelter in place has been issued, and that simply is west of that facility and south of 330. So if you're in that area and you haven't shelter in place now. And if you're not in that area, you're outside the area, me and Jaime have been just talking about it most of the morning, it's best, our advice, and again, we're no experts, is there's no reason to be outside when something like this is unfolding. When you see this plume of smoke and when you're not sure exactly what health impacts it may have, if you don't need to be outside, don't be outside. But if you are in that green zone that you see on that map, definitely shelter in place and do what local law enforcement suggests and what it entails. I can tell you we are working to get more specific information on what polypropylene is, what potential health hazards it may have, and we're hoping to talk to a pulmonary expert soon, Dr. Cameron Boca. Okay, I'm just getting this information now, so an update on injuries. This is from the City of Baytown's Public Information Officer. 3 people did drive themselves to area clinics to be checked out for burns. We do not know at this point whether they worked at the plant or not. So again, this is information coming into our newsroom just now from the City of Baytown Public Information Officer. We can tell you 3 people drove themselves to clinics to be checked out for what we're being told are burns, but we do not know if those people were actually plant employees or whether they worked elsewhere. So important to note. So I guess the number has changed, maybe perhaps 3 people with minor injuries is what we can report right now. And those are people who did not have to be transported by first responders that we saw on the ground on an Air 11 shot. They were not transported by ambulance. The public information officer for the City of Baytown saying they drove themselves to clinics to be checked out for what they're describing as burns. And we're still working to confirm whether they were Exxon employees or whether they worked elsewhere or they were just in the area. But again, 3 people, minor injuries, drove themselves to the airport to be checked out for burns. Reading through some comments here. Priscilla says she works at the Exxon complex next to the facility, the Exxon facility where this fire is happening. She says we just got evacuated out of her plant and she has made it home. So we're happy you're home. We're happy you're safe. Priscilla. Norman telling us that at the actual plant in question, not all workers are heading home, just non-essential employees have been sent home.
He's going to come over, do a little catch up with Marcelino, and then swap him out if he wants to bail or take a break.
Jaime, do we know if we're going to talk to Cameron?
We've got a breaker coming in,
Okay.
and all the kind of like, you can kind of catch her up and then y'all can swap out.
Okay.
So you give you a little break.
Okay.
Mike 1 is right here.
So the biggest update we have so far is that injury total that has changed. We've been told that there were no injuries reported by Exxon. We're now hearing, this is coming from the Baytown Public Information Officer, that 3 individuals have suffered minor injuries. These people were not transported to the hospital by ambulance or life flight or anything like that. These are minor injuries, treatment for burns, we're told. And these 3 people decided to drive themselves to area clinics so they could be checked out for what is being described as burns. and we are still working to confirm if they worked indeed at the ExxonMobil plant or if they did not. A lot of questions coming in about polypropylene and what it's used for. I can tell you it's used in all sorts of things, and this is just from a preliminary search I did on the ExxonMobil facility page. It's used in plastic products. It's used to make automotive products. It's used in all sorts of things. It's a quite common material. Used a lot in consumer products as well. And just on comments that I'm gauging from you guys throughout most of the morning, fires like this are really difficult to put out on their own. You really just have to let them burn out. That's what we're hearing from a lot of folks familiar with this type of material. That's still a live picture, Jaime, on the left.
That is correct.
We do have, that is a live picture. Air 11 will be leaving shortly to refuel, and we will be taking a live look from our ground shot.
So as we get ready for Air 11 to sort of leave the scene here, in the last hour and a half, we've seen the situation drastically improve from when we first, got on here on social media to break in with this news. The thick cloud of smoke, not as dark, not billowing as wide, and definitely less flames than those first images we saw early on into our coverage from viewers, where we saw these massive fireballs just exploding from this facility. It was more widespread. It appears that what firefighters are doing there on the ground is working, or really this is just starting to slowly burn out. We can tell you there's air quality monitoring that is happening. That is what Exxon is telling us. That's at the facility near the fence line as well, just to ensure that it is safe. And I believe anchor Rekha Budaraj is getting ready to...
I'll be joining you.
Okay, yeah. Rekha will be joining me momentarily as we continue to follow this news. You can see Air 11 shot has now been replaced by our ground crew. Reporter Josh Marshall on the scene. We also have another crew en route, or likely already there, following this story. Hey Jaime, do we know of any? Has the desk heard of any press conferences from officials that are planned or anything like that?
They have not mentioned anything at this point just yet. We're constantly checking to see if we're going to get any sort of official update from officials there at the scene.
Great. That is, and I mean, based on my experience covering these stories, it's kind of surprising that we haven't had something on camera from officials yet. But as soon as that happens, I mean, we have crews in place to bring that to you live. If you're just joining us, let's recap the scene. What's most important right now, right off the top, is two things that you see on your screen. On the right-hand side is that shelter-in-place zone. It is out an abundance of caution that Exxon telling us they put this in place. If you live, that red dot you see, that is the Baytown ExxonMobil complex. If you live west of that, south of 330, that's that green area you see. If you live, work around that area, you're not sheltering in place, you need to now, until we hear otherwise from local law enforcement and officials in the area. The second piece of information that I think is critically important and will probably reassure a lot of families concerned about their loved ones who worked at the plant or near the plant. Right now we are hearing only reports of 3 minor injuries, and these are people that we know drove themselves to to area clinics for what they're describing as burns. They were not transported by ambulance, so they are minor injuries. And what we are still working to confirm is whether they worked at the Baytown ExxonMobil complex or not. Also important for folks to know, and we've touched on this throughout the morning, if you're worried about your Exxon family members who work at the facility, maybe you haven't heard from them yet, you're concerned about how they're doing, if they're okay. A lot of workers have been trying to reach out to their families via social media on this actual live stream, commenting that they're sheltering in place and that they're okay. So that is one. If you can't reach your family members, that's a good resource to see, if they're okay and how they're doing, because I've seen at least a dozen people that have tried to reach out to their families through the social media stream.
So I'm Reka Mutaraj now joining Marcelino Benito, and we're giving you the latest on this plant fire in Baytown, an Exxon plant fire. Marcelino was mentioning sheltering in place, and we just want to update people that Sheldon ISD is saying that they're asking all students to stay inside for practice. We know that it's summertime right now, school is out, but oftentimes there's summer school, there's summer activities, so they're asking students and faculty to get inside. That is just as a precaution. Goose Creek ISD says, you know, they don't have summer school. It's not in session right now, so the order there doesn't affect that many people, but they wanted to just make sure they've been tweeting updates from the Goose Creek ISD Twitter page, just keeping people aware of this as well in case, you know, if you're on Twitter and you're following this, saying, you know, to keep close to that if you work for the district, so you can keep tabs on what exactly is happening, but no threat there. So that's important to mention as well.
We have not heard from Exxon in some time. Their last public comment was a tweet they sent out informing us that they were conducting personnel accounting to make sure everyone who was at the facility is accounted for and safe. We've not heard updated numbers from them on that. We also know that they are extinguishing and working to extinguish that fire themselves. There are no outside firefighting agencies that have been brought into Exxon to help them battle this fire. It is being handled internally. In that statement, they're also telling us that as a precaution, their industrial hygiene staff is conducting air quality monitoring at the site and the fence line to make sure nothing dangerous or hazardous is being sent up in the air and the air quality remains safe for the public. Also telling us they're cooperating with regulatory agencies, and we heard from Cheryl Mercedes, Reka, earlier that our I team is already looking into possible issues they've had, violations, fines, up to $1 million in some in a year. For situations and violations in air quality standards in the past.
You've been talking about sheltering in place, and of course that is for folks who live or work just west of the plant. A lot of people are like, what does that even mean? To be very specific, that means to stay indoors, keep your doors closed, your windows closed, turn off your air conditioning. I know that is hard to ask of people in this heat, but it is important because, again, as we've seen with plant fires, especially earlier this year with the ITC fire, you just never know what is in the air, and this is obviously a developing situation. This has been going on for, what, about an hour and a half now that we've been following this. So luckily in this case, no major injuries. We know that 3 people drove themselves to local hospitals or local clinics for possible burns. These are minor injuries. That's why they weren't transported. But again, out of an abundance of caution, they want people to shelter in place. You know, get your fan going inside your house, turn off your AC, and sit tight for a little while, because it's unclear right now how long this shelter in place will be in effect.
A lot of people asking how long it will go on, and we just don't have those answers yet. As soon as it's safe and we get that information, we will pass it along to you. Also worth, I'm sure you agree, Reka, even though you don't live in that green zone, if you're in the area, it's probably best. We would advise people not to go out if you don't have to, if you're anywhere near the smoke, even if you're not in that shelter-in-place zone. Just not the smartest thing until we know what's in the air.
Absolutely. We've been looking at maps of the area. I don't really see, I mean, this is a plant, an industrial plant, so obviously there's not a lot of other little businesses around, but if you're in that area, you work in that area, if you're headed in that direction, try to avoid that area. Just want to be safe because this is all coming out, and we're hoping to hear from officials soon. We haven't heard from officials with Exxon
which is rare
or emergency
in these types
officials.
Of stories. I mean, we're coming up on an hour and a half, and we haven't had any sort of press conference or anything like that. We're standing by for that. As soon as it happens, we'll bring it to you. But that is rare in these types of situations. It's almost been at least 45 minutes to an hour since we've heard from Exxon, even via tweet. So we're making the calls. Our desk is reaching out and constantly, you know, nagging them for information that the public needs, but so far they haven't said much other than that tweet.
We should mention, though, that the Texas Commission of Environmental Quality is on its way to the plant, probably already there, and they will hopefully provide more information as soon as that becomes available. Obviously, emergency response teams are on the ground. They're battling this fire, which looks a lot better than it did about an hour ago when you saw those flames shooting out. So many of those pictures we were broadcasting from Air 11. But it looks like black smoke, got a little white smoke. It looks like they're putting some water on those flames, possibly foam. So we're going to watch as they, hopefully get this out sooner than later.
That viewer video, I'm sure you saw it too, Reka, from a viewer who was driving and just clearly saw it as it was happening. We're assuming it. Let's put it up on the screen for folks. That viewer video right there. I would assume it's moments after this happened, or this initially started, because of the intensity of that fireball and just how much fire and flames we see. When you compare that to the live pictures from our ground crew now, the situation's definitely improved somewhat. There is a lot of comments that you guys are sending us. Some of you saying that your family members have been sent home. Others of you saying, my family member works there and he's telling me he can't go anywhere. They're not letting him leave. They're not letting him access his truck. So there is some debate going back and forth from viewers on that. I can tell you, we have not heard whether Exxon employees have been sent home officially, so we're working to get that information, but that's a discrepancy that we're seeing among viewers. Some viewers saying, hey, my family member's on his way home. Others saying, he's reached out, I know he's okay, but they're not letting him leave. They're asking him to shelter in place.
So if you're just joining us now, we are approaching 1 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, and the big news story we've been following for the last, 2 hours or an hour and a half? It was around
almost hour 45. We're coming up on 2.
So we're coming up on 2 hours following this story. There was an explosion and fire at an Exxon facility in Baytown. The smoke, the flames could be seen for miles. We have viewer video that has come in showing when this all happened. We'll get that back up right now to show you initially what happened. This is not live. This is viewer video from about an hour and a half ago showing those flames coming up from the Baytown area. Now, since this has happened, the fire has been somewhat contained. We're not seeing flames anymore. There's still a lot of black smoke, but the flames have died down. And the good news is that there are no major injuries reported so far. We've heard that 3 people possibly had minor burns, but they were able to drive themselves to a clinic and get checked out and treated for those. We haven't heard of any other injuries or fatalities. And really, this is just a big plume of smoke right now. But there is a shelter in place that's still happening that is just west of the facility. And they're asking folks to get inside their homes or your place of business. If you're at work in the area, get inside, shut the doors, shut the windows, turn off the AC, which, as Marcelino and I have been saying, that's a hard ask in this heat, but it's important. This is out of an abundance of caution. We don't know what chemicals are in the air. We're still trying to work on that. Our investigative team, Cheryl Mercedes, has been looking into that as well. We're going to have her in a little bit to talk about what's possibly being pushed into the air right now. But shelter in place, no major threats to schools in the area because obviously it's summer, school's out. Some places do have summer school. The only school district was Sheldon ISD that said we do have activities, so kids who are outside should come inside, faculty should come inside, wait until they get the all clear to go back out. But for the most part, this looks like this is somewhat under control, Marcelino.
Goose Creek ISD did say they do, a lot of their campuses and facilities do fall in that shelter in place zone. Mm-hmm. School is not in session for them, but administrators and staff, a small amount of them, according to the district, are in some of those buildings. So they also issued a tweet letting folks know that they are sheltering in place. It's not a huge number of people, but they do have people in several campuses that fall in that shelter in place zone. All morning, Reka, we've been getting viewer reports, both from people that sent us video and people that are just a mile away. I've been reading the comments. One viewer told us that they work behind the plant, and that when the explosion happened, and again, witnesses are calling this an explosion. I think it's worth noting Exxon has not used that word yet, but those viewers are telling us it shook their entire building and rattled their windows. Another viewer commenting on our live stream that he was at his mother's house just a mile away from this facility, and their home also shook. They felt what they're describing as an explosion too. So definitely the impact was felt quite a bit away. Jaime even mentioning he's been reading some comments where viewers felt it 4 to 5 miles away from the facility.
Jaime, are there any more viewer comments as far as questions are concerned? Marcelino brought up the tweets and the information that we've been putting out. But what's interesting about this is we haven't gotten any official word on camera. We have so many reporters on the ground and around the area. We're not getting official word that way from folks on the ground. We have seen the last tweet was from Exxon about 45 minutes ago with an update on this, but we're still waiting to get some official confirmation about whether we are truly in the clear. I know folks have questions about that. What else do we have?
Let's see here. The last tweet, Reka, just so we tell our viewers, official information from ExxonMobil coming at 11:36 this morning. It is now 1:03 p.m., so it's been more than an hour.
All right, so people are asking, is the fire contained? That's from Maria Trujillo. We don't know yet. It looks a lot better, that's for sure. If you've been following this for the last hour and a half, we've seen pictures of those flames. Again, you can see it for miles. We have viewer video that's come in that shows just how high they were. But as far as whether it is contained, we know that emergency firefighters are on ground. You see a lot of black smoke, a lot of white smoke. You're hoping that this will be under control soon, and it looks like they're working in that direction.
Reka, I'm just on Twitter here, and I'm getting a statement from Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo. I'm just going to read it out loud. Harris County Pollution Control is responding to the fire at the Exxon Refinery in Baytown, and they will be collecting real-time air quality information. Baytown Emergency Management and its fire department is on standby. Out of abundance of caution, Exxon has asked that shelter-in-place be issued west of its plant and south of 330. That's that map area we've been showing all morning long. Shelter in place, again, means to stay indoors, keep doors and windows closed, and turn off the air conditioning. And they say the Office of Emergency Management continues to closely follow the situation. That statement just coming in via tweet from County Judge Lena Hidalgo.
All right, that is good to hear. So obviously they'll be monitoring the air quality, and that's probably going to happen for several days after this fire is out.
Sure.
That is the most important thing. You see these initial flammable chemicals just burst, but not everything gets burned up in the atmosphere, and so we'll be keeping tabs on that, and obviously environmental agencies will be keeping tabs on that as well. The thing is, fires at chemical plants are not uncommon. This happens more often than we realize. And, you just hope for the best, that there are no injuries, there are no fatalities, and that they can get this under control. But Marcelino, you covered the ITC fire. When people start seeing this now, it's almost a little too soon.
Yeah, absolutely. People in this area, you don't even have to live in and around these refineries. In the entire Houston area, we're sensitive to this now. And anytime we see a black plume of smoke like this, we see these fireballs from these facilities, there's apprehension, there's tension in the community because they want to know, understandably so, what's being sent up into the air, what impact it will have on me and my family. Are the people that work there safe? So there's understandable concern in the community, Reka, and hopefully we get some more answers. We do know that it was polypropylene, a polypropylene unit that was burning. That's coming from Exxon in that initial tweet we got at 11:30 this morning. And that's a common material that's used in all sorts of automotive products, plastics, all sorts of products, gasoline production, all those sorts of things. It's very common, and this is just coming from comments that I've read from viewers who work in the industry. They say that when that sort of material burns, it definitely takes some time for that to burn out. It's not easily combated by water. They just have to let it burn.
A quick programming note as we continue to look at this map, and obviously some video that was taken from a few hours ago. The Bold and the Beautiful will re-air at 3:12 a.m. So we apologize, but this is important that we get these stories and these breaking news stories on air, and this is obviously something that could hurt people and put people's lives in danger, so this is important. So if you are watching us on TV or you're watching us on Facebook Live, just know that The Bold and the Beautiful will re-air early this morning or tomorrow morning at 3:12 a.m.
And Reka, we do want to mention, we're just hearing that there is a press conference in the works that is happening very soon, I am told, and as soon as that press conference begins, we will obviously stream it for you on air here and obviously online as well. So we're just standing by, and that press conference, I'm told, will be conducted by officials with the city of Baytown, and I assume the Baytown Office of Emergency Management. Recapping for you on the right, you see the shelter-in-place zone. The red dot is the ExxonMobil Baytown Complex facility. Anything west of that facility and south of 330 is in the shelter-in-place zone. and you were asked to shelter in place, to close your doors, to close your windows, shut off your air conditioning, and out of an abundance of caution, and those are ExxonMobil's words, not ours, they just want to be safe until they figure out exactly what the situation, when the situation is under control and when it's safe to get out.
Do you want to do on? Janelle Bluda is here now, and she's been verifying some of this information because Janelle, as you know, so many things can get mixed up online, on social media, and you don't know what's true and what's not. So you have been able to get some facts together and really kind of sort this out for us. What have you found out so far?
Yeah, Rick, I mean, obviously, you know, all the information is so preliminary right now. We still haven't even heard from officials yet. So actually, a lot of it is tough to verify until we know exactly what's happening over there. Now, the first claim that some people are talking about is the chemical that's burning is toxic. Now, we've learned that the chemical is a polypropylene material. Now, polypropylene itself is not toxic, but what's burning is a chemical that makes up polypropylene. Until we know exactly what that chemical is, which we haven't heard yet from officials what is exactly burning, we can't say whether or not it's toxic. We are working on finding this out, and we will update with more answers. But right now, as you can see, that is staying in the unconfirmed column there. Another claim is that Exxon has had a fire before. Now, this is true. Exxon had, if you guys remember, Exxon had a recent fire on March 16th where a unit that processes gasoline burned for 3 hours.
For sure.
It was actually put out the same day, and Exxon said they didn't think it had any adverse effects on air quality. But I remember covering that story, and I remember neighbors saying that they felt a large boom, and it was very scary for a lot of people who lived right next door, but the fire was out almost about 3 hours later, so it was out very quickly compared to other fires that we've seen. Now, we are also looking into any other fire incidents that Exxon has had in the past few years, though, but we're trying to figure those out right now. There's another claim that there were gases in the air at 8:45 this morning, and workers had to be sent home early because of it. Now, that was actually 2 hours before the fire started. Exxon has to report air pollution to TCEQ, but that's something that they may not do for a couple of days or possibly weeks, so we won't know for some time. But we do know that Exxon has reported at that particular plant 235 air pollution events since 2003, and they've reported 991 since 2003 from all of their facilities in Baytown. So that's quite a few, but like I said, we won't know that for sure until it is reported to TCEQ. So that right there is staying in the gas detected. It's staying in the unconfirmed unknown column.
And that's really important. Again, if you've seen our verifies with KHOU, and Janelle has done a lot of these, it's so important because there's so much information that's coming out. Sometimes that's the way we get our information, and obviously we're getting it straight from officials, but sometimes just for the sake of time and the fact that it is an emergency, they will tweet updates or email us updates, and that information can kind of get jumbled up online sometimes. You don't know what to believe, so these verifies are really important. What else are you looking into, Janelle? I know this is a developing situation. Is there something else that's a question that's been coming in from folks as far as this fire is concerned, or is it mainly what is burning and are we safe?
Yeah, so another one of the questions that we're actually looking into is how they're actually fighting the fire. You know, we've seen water from the trucks going onto the fire, but are they using anything else? So we have to get obviously officials to tell us how they're doing that. That's not something we can just research on our own. So we're trying to find some fire experts to figure that out for us. Let's see. I mean, but if anybody has anything they want us to try to verify, they can always tag us, KHU Verify, or hashtag KHU Verify, or send us an email online, and we will try to look into that for them. But like we all say, it's all very new. So.
Well, I'll tell you, Debbie Jo Mauser Lindsay is watching our Facebook feed, and she said thank you. She said that was a good chart. So thank you. I hope this helps really clarify. These verifies that we do are so important because for so many viewers, again, you don't really know what's going on, especially if you're just joining us. So it's a really clear way to give you the facts.
Hey, Jaime, is my mic up? So, Reka, we have Cameron Boca on the phone right now, and he's a pulmonary expert who's here to answer some questions for us on this developing situation. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So, Mr. Boca, can you tell us a little bit about first off, there's a lot of concern about what's in the air, and I know you can't talk specifically about these sorts of chemicals, but what can you tell us about polypropylene?
Yeah, I think this tragedy is striking all of us, and it's just so sudden. Polypropylene it's basically a polymer. It's a substantial part of a lot of plastics, and also it's used in manufacture of oil products, and so what we do know is that the news has been saying that polypropylene exists there in the fire, and what we need to be concerned about is that it is combustible, and that it does have short-term and long-term health effects.
And I guess that is the concern from folks who live in the area, who are really close to this facility, maybe those even more so those sheltering in place. You mentioned long-term and short-term health effects. What are some of those possible health effects as a result of this material?
Well, long-term health effects vary, and they can be anything from, depending on the time of exposure, the length of exposure. We're talking about anything from interstitial lung disease to what's called irritant-induced asthma, reactive airway dysfunction syndrome, or ADS. The problem with asking a question like this is that it can put people into a panic, and that's not what the intent is here. The intent is just to educate. I think the first and foremost thing, obviously, is to know that these are combustible chemicals. They will have effects. So if anybody is having fever, if anybody's having trouble breathing, shortness of breath, burning of the throat, coughing, dizziness, lightheadedness, chest pain, pain on inspiration, which means when you take a breath or when you take a deep breath into your lungs and you have pain on either side of your chest, lung, side, or back, definitely need to get to medical care immediately, or get that person to medical care immediately.
Dr. Boca, this is Rekha Mudaraj with KHOU. Want to talk to you about prolonged exposure. It looks like, at least to us, because we don't see the flames in the air anymore, that this fire is on its way to being put out. Is that a good sign as far as exposure is concerned? The sooner it's put out, the less exposure we'll have to any possible chemicals in what's been burning, or is it the fact that once it's in the air, it can affect us for days?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a very complicated question with a complicated answer. It depends. There's actually whole fields dedicated to figuring out the answer to your question. So the easiest way to answer it is to think about how high the plume of the smoke is above us and how high it goes up into the atmosphere. So the higher that that the burned products of these chemicals go up into the atmosphere, so in other words, the higher the plume is, it's theoretically considered to be less of a risk for people in the surrounding communities. But then again, we also have to take a lot of things into consideration, such as wind speed, whether or not there's humidity that day, today, and so things. So it's a very complicated answer, and I'm actually not qualified to give you all the details on that. But what we can say is that now that the fire is out, it definitely reduces the risk of spreading more smoke and more plume. But there's always burning within the area, and so once the fire goes out, so the smoke may still linger for hours to days, and that's usually an unknown.
Dr. Boca, if you're not, we've got a lot of questions on social media, folks talking to us about with concerns. Maybe they're not exactly in that shelter-in-place zone. Maybe they're not, west of the plant and south of 330 where that shelter-in-place has been issued. But they're around the facility. They're close. They're just not in that exact zone where that shelter in place has been issued. What would be your advice to folks who maybe are close to this facility, but they don't exactly fall in that shelter in place zone? Is it a good idea just to stay inside to be safe, or what would be your advice to folks with that concern?
I think what's challenging is knowing what to do in a situation like that. So you're absolutely right. I think that people are definitely warranted to have concern. I think we should all have concern, and we do have authorities in place to tell us, what the outline of the region is, and so we hope that that's correct, and we hope that we can follow those boundaries. So if we're within the boundaries, we have to be more strict and follow their rules, whether it's a shelter alert or whether it's evolved to a move out. But if you're outside of that area, I would suggest following very closely, minute to hours. Have either follow on the KHOU station, the live streams, find out when they're planning on moving those borders out or in, depending on how it evolves. If you're not having symptoms of fever, chills, runny nose, cough, what's called syncope, passing out, or lightheadedness, dizziness, chest pain, trouble breathing, chest pain during breathing, burning in the throat, stinging. If you're not having these symptoms, I think for the most part, we can assume that you're kind of in an area where we're okay to stay at home within that area.
And are those sorry to interrupt, are those symptoms that folks would feel, after just a few minutes, out in this, or does it take a little more time for some of those symptoms to manifest?
Well, honestly, some of the symptoms can be delayed, and in certain people they can be immediate. So we know that the elderly and infants, newborns, infants, and toddler age can definitely be more susceptible, as well as the elderly. People with immunocompromised states, meaning poor immune systems, weakened immune systems, whether it's from medication, if the doctor is giving you a medication that is lowering your immune system for a particular reason, or if you're a patient with heart disease and are on heart medicines, cardiac patients, in other words, or if you are a lung patient with structural lung disease, COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, asthma, bronchitis, emphysema, fibrosis, lung fibrosis, interstitial lung disease, any of these categories and more, then it would be best to call your doctor's office if you haven't already, if you do have concerns. If you have symptoms, however, you need to seek medical care immediately. They can occur acutely within seconds to minutes, like you had said, or they can be delayed hours to within a day or two.
And I think you said this off the top, polypropylene is highly combustible. Is that what I heard you say towards the top? I mean, do you know anything about whether, because we've heard a lot of comments on social media, people following our live stream saying, this you have to let this thing burn out. Do you have any knowledge about that you could pass along?
I don't. I just know that the closer that people are to the ground zero, I guess we could call it, at the incident, in other words, the workers themselves, the concerns would be with their exposures would be if it's still burning. If it's still burning, there's definitely going to be particulate in the air. If it's anything that burns is going to give off some kind of a smoke. So there's going to be some particulate dust in the air floating around in that area. So that's highly concerning. Yes.
Does this have? Oh, go ahead, Rick.
No, go ahead.
Does this have any particular smell? In past fires, I think, if I recall correctly, during the ITC plant, whatever material was burning had more of a pungent, sweet odor. As far as you know, are there any? Does this, whatever's burning now, this polypropylene, does that release a certain scent or anything other than just the smell of burning?
In this case, I don't know, because I'm not sure what other additives and chemicals and may be mixed in there. So sometimes there's other things that are actually causing the smells. It may not be the toxin itself. Sometimes it is the toxin itself. We have our olfactory sense for a reason. So our sense of smell is used to warn us of danger. But again, we have to weigh all of these together. We can't just rely on some one thing, sense of smell.
I got it.
So what's the overall takeaway with this right now? You know, we've got a shelter in place. We're asking people to go inside, close their doors, their windows, you know, possibly turn off their AC as well, just to keep any of those particulates, any those gases outside of their home. How worried should they be, and what should they be doing for the next couple of hours?
I mean, I think if it was me, I would definitely have my phone charged at all times. I would let people know where I'm at. I would check on loved ones and pets, children and the elderly. If the babysitter's watching the kid, if the grandmother's watching the kid, definitely those are things on my mind. All of the symptoms that I mentioned, I'm happy to go through them again. These are just a short list of symptoms. If anything just doesn't feel right, I think seeking emergency medical help is very important. Another symptom also is the tingling of the skin, or any kind of burning rash type sensation of the skin, redness, warmth. But if anything, it happens quickly, acutely. If you are a lung patient, this is my specialty. If you do have pulmonary disease, definitely call your pulmonary office, leave a message, get your doctor to call you back, or at least the staff to communicate what your concerns are, and make sure you have enough medication if you have to be in the area for any particular reason.
Good.
All right, Dr. Boca, thank you so much. Before we let you go, anything else we need to keep in mind?
No, I hope the authorities will give us a clearer picture of what's actually in the fire. As soon as we hear that, I think more people will have knowledge to understand what we're dealing with, and I think everybody should just really keep an ear to the ground and be as safe as possible, and hopefully get past this as safely as we can.
Dr. Boca, just before we wrap, maybe people weren't tuning in right at the beginning of our interview with you. Just could you recap those key symptoms that people should be on the lookout for just before we wrap with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, this is a long list of symptoms. I'm just going to go through some of the more alarming ones. But anything out of the ordinary for yourself, if you're having trouble breathing, if you're having chest pain while breathing, a stitch on the side pain, skin rash that's developed, warmth to the skin, tingling or numbness, lightheadedness, dizziness, feelings of passing out, burning in the nose, the back of the throat, the eyes, watery eyes, itchy eyes, sudden coughing that doesn't seem to make sense with a lot of mucus and burning. These are including fever. These would be reasons to get help immediately.
Alrighty, we appreciate your time and your expertise, Dr. Boca. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
So we just recapping really quickly what we heard from Dr. Boca. He is a pulmonary expert and walked us through some of the key symptoms that folks out there might be experiencing, and if you're experiencing, what you need to do in terms of seeking medical help. He says anything out of the ordinary, obviously, you should seek medical attention. If you have trouble breathing, side pain, skin rash, burning in your nose, burning in your throat, anything that just seems out of the ordinary and you're in and around this area, you should seek medical attention. And of course, if you have concerns, you should just call your doctor's office. He made a distinction, though, saying if you have concerns, you can call your doctor's office, but if you're experiencing anything like those symptoms that we just rattled off for you, then it is definitely best to seek medical help right away. Recapping what we know so far, we're going on almost 2.5, 3 hours since the situation first unfolded, and you have two images on your screen right now. On the right, you see a map that shows the shelter-in-place zone. That purple dot is where the ExxonMobil Baytown complex is, where this fire is burning right now. To the west of that and south of 330, that is that green area. If you fall in that zone, that is where you are being asked by officials to shelter in place. On the left side of your screen is a live ground video coming in from our crew on the ground there of what this fire looks like right now, and it looks completely different than it did several hours ago, around 10:45, 11 in the morning, when we started our social media streaming on here. Early on, we were told that there were no injuries reported. That has slightly changed over time. Now we are reporting three people have been injured. Those are minor injuries. These people, we're told, drove themselves, and this is, of course, coming from the Baytown Public Information Officer, so the city of Baytown, telling us that 3 people did drive themselves to area clinics, and they drove there to be checked out for burns. At this point, we're still working to confirm whether they worked at the plant or not. So that number is up to 3, and those are minor injuries, reported burns that we're hearing from officials. That plume of smoke has gotten smaller and smaller, those flames not shooting hardly as high as they were earlier. This fire, I can tell you, has been combated by folks, employees at Exxon, their firefighting teams. This fire was not, they did not bring in firefighters from outside agencies. We're told by County Judge Lena Hidalgo that they did have people on standby should the situation warrant it, but Exxon has been handling this fire internally all morning long.
Press starts at 2 p.m.
Okay, I'm just hearing word now that the press conference, do we know who that's with?
City of Baytown.
Okay, getting word now that press conference will take place with the city of Baytown, and that is set to take place at 2 p.m. So just about half an hour from now. There will be our best opportunity to learn more information about this developing situation and what's in the air, possible shelters in place, how long that will last, whether they will be lifted. So our first opportunity to question folks on camera again will be at 2. That'll be our first opportunity to question people on camera about what happened here. We do know that the last update via tweet we've gotten from Exxon has been, did come in at 11:36 this morning. It is now 1:30 p.m., so we're coming on 2 hours since we have heard from Exxon. So a lot of people really anxious, as we all are, to hear from the plant itself about what is going on. Before our interview with Dr. Boca, we did hear from County Judge Lena Hidalgo in a statement, along with the Harris County Homeland Security and Emergency Management Office. They're telling us that Harris County Pollution Control has responded to the fire in Baytown, and they are in the process, or soon will be, collecting real-time air quality information. Baytown Emergency Management and its fire department is on standby. Of course, they are on standby because they have not been called in. Exxon has been handling this fire internally. And out of an abundance of caution, they're saying that Exxon issued this shelter in place. And of course, the county continues to monitor it. We've spoken to local law enforcement officials like Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, who also telling us that the county and his department is monitoring this as well. But when you take a look at the image on the left, that live video, as you see water continuing to pour in on those flames that we still see shooting up there towards the bottom of that tower, this situation a lot more under control, we presume, based on what we're seeing visually, than it was early on. Jaime, can you put up that viewer video once more before Cheryl gets mic'd up here? That's the video. So you compare what we just showed you live to this viewer video, which was sent in to us almost 2.5, 3 hours ago. So the situation definitely more under control. We're not seeing those huge fireballs, those huge flames, not as much, far less black smoke, and this thing appears to be burning out or in the process of soon being fully extinguished, we hope. So let's go ahead and put up again that map so folks can continue to know where that shelter in place is if you're just joining us, and that live picture on the left as we bring in. Are you ready to go, Cheryl? Are you mic'd up?
Yeah, I believe so.
So Cheryl Mercedes, investigative reporter, get us up to date on what you guys are digging. I know you guys have been digging since.
We're still going through so much, but we just wanted to bring you the latest. You know, there's been some lawsuits, one involving the Sierra Club. I don't know if you'll recall, because it's been since 2010, but they filed a suit against Exxon to keep them from expanding in that area. And that is still tied up in appeals right now. So this has been almost a decade going back. So that was an interesting find. We have not found anything on any OSHA violations. However, with TCEQ, there have been 30 since 1995. But if you look at the last 10 years, 22, and it's nearly a million.
22 with
22 violations
okay.
with TCEQ,
okay.
and that's nearly $900,000 in fines. So I have the documents right here from back in 2010. One of the first violations was $500,000. And most of them, when you look at them closely, the 22 violations is just, failure to prevent emissions. And we're talking, things like carbon monoxide, nitrogen, things like there are a number of chemicals there.
And these are TCEQ?
These are
violations?
TCEQ only violations that I'm talking about right now. Now the EPA has their own set of violations, and we looked at the last 5 years, there's been 12. And those just come in right under $20,000, but there's a case out there or two where they've been penalized through the court system too. And right here, we're talking in the 3-mile radius of that facility, 37,000 people. We're talking 13,000 households, so it's a big concern in that area, and people are concerned with what's being emitted out there.
So this impacts a lot of people clearly, and
yes.
we're seeing that on, the viewers commenting on the social stream. Do we know do the documents you've dug up say anything about fires, explosions, anything like that?
Well, we know
these hazardous
that
incidents?
there's, we had a fire in March, the day before the ITC fire there in Exxon, and there have been, at least I believe four in the last few years, but it just depends on whether or not they can control it, and what's reported and what's a violation. And some of these violations I looked into at TCEQ, it's simply a penalty for failure to maintain a flame. So there's all sorts of things that they could be fined for, but all of these we're talking allegations of air pollution, basically.
Which I guess is the concern now
yes,
after
if you
an
look at
incident
that
like
right
this.
now, it's just, it's a scary thing. Imagine looking outside of your home and seeing this. And not only that, you reported earlier what people were saying they felt in their homes, and when you look at the map and you look at Google Maps and you look at satellite Earth, you can see plants. But like I said, we're talking a number of households,
There's homes in there too.
13,000 households in that area. And that's just a 3-mile radius.
Yeah, if you branch that out, we're talking about so many more people. We were talking earlier with Reka about the sensitivity that folks have in light of what we've seen the last few months with ITC and another plant that blew up and had some fires in Crosby. Would you agree with that? Are people super sensitive about, concerned about what's in their area?
Well, absolutely, and rightfully so.
Imagine living in that area and feeling like something like that, being told, shelter in place, and you're hearing reports of employees reportedly riding themselves to the emergency room to get checked out with alleged burns. These are all things that are a big concern, especially, when you start hearing names of chemicals that we've heard in the past. We haven't heard exactly what's burning there, but back like with the ITC fire, benzene was a huge concern.
Sure.
So that's what they know those chemicals in these areas. They live there, they know the chemicals that they need to be aware of and that might pose a risk to them.
I know you guys are still digging. Anything that you're focusing on coming up for the later newscast, I'm sure?
Well, we're looking through a number of, federal and civil penalties. There are just so many civil penalties dealing with the company. Here we're trying to narrow it down to that one facility for you because there are a lot of Exxon facilities in that area. There are 3, obviously, facilities just in that one location in Baytown that we've seen, but, there's Exxon everywhere. Offices and there's so many different kinds of facilities we can look at that are tied to Exxon, so we're trying to narrow it down.
And if I do the math in my head quickly, we're talking more than $1 million worth in fines, right?
Yeah,
just
if you look back to
reported.
1995 from TCEQ, but if you look at the last 10 years, just that in itself is almost $1 million, just in that decade. So we're trying to narrow everything down and see how far back we can go. So far right now, it looks like the 1990s. So, but we're continuing to go back and dig, and see what we can go. Because when you have a name like Exxon, you've got to really look into
that address where this incident is taking place.
Yeah, and everything that you've discussed is that address, correct?
Yes, everything
Okay.
that I'm discussing here is specific to the Decker
This facility.
Drive. Yeah, absolutely. That one location where you're seeing these flames right now, we're focusing on that. So the violations that we have discussed here and that we have online for you, we do have a web article up, I believe. All of those are specific to that Decker Road area.
Right. Thank you, Cheryl.
Oh,
we know
thank
you'll
you.
keep digging.
Absolutely. We'll let you know what we find.
Sure. Thank you. So, continuing our coverage here on our social media platforms, I got to tell you, just in the last 5-10 minutes, where we were talking with Cheryl about her investigative team and what she's digging up in terms of documents and violations, fines. That video on the left, that's a live picture you're looking at. It continues to look better and better. Almost no black smoke still. Almost no black smoke billowing from that one flame that you see. There's still spraying water on it, but a significant improvement just in the last 10 minutes in terms of visually what we're seeing. If you're just joining us, I want to recap quickly what we've been following all morning. This was a fire at the Exxon Baytown mobile complex. Initially, I can tell you several witnesses, people in the area, even Exxon employees who work at the facility were reaching out to family members, and we were getting lots of reports into the newsroom of people that work near the plant, work at the plant, that say that there was some sort of explosion. They tell us that one viewer telling us in particular that it shook their entire office building and rattled windows. I remember one viewer telling us on that social media stream that he was in his mother's house. His mother lives 1 mile away from this facility, and they felt their house shake. They felt their windows rattle as well. Jaime was also telling us that he's been reading other comments where folks up to 4 to 5 miles away felt whatever this was. Exxon not calling this an explosion. They have not used that word. That is a word we're getting from viewers who are describing what they experienced. At 2 o'clock with an upcoming press conference with the city of Baytown, I presume we may hear that word for the first time from officials as we get more clarifications about what exactly happened. Earlier this morning, there were no injuries reported. That's what we were being told early on. That situation, or that number, has now changed a bit from 0 to 3. I can tell you so far we've confirmed that there were 3 injuries, 3 people who drove themselves to area clinics. Important to note, we did see lots of ambulances outside the facility, but what we're being told, what we've confirmed, is that those 3 people drove themselves to area clinics on their own because they wanted to be checked out for burns, minor burns, and we're still working to confirm if those were actual plant employees at this Exxon facility or whether they worked elsewhere and they just suffered some minor burns because of what happened here. What's also developed over the course of the morning is that initially there was no shelter in place. A shelter in place is now issued. It was issued about 45 minutes after this all started and has been in place ever since. That has not been lifted as of now, and that is the map that we've shown you all morning long on this social media stream. That green area, that area shaded green, that is where the shelter in place is currently in effect. That is everything west of the facility in question and south of 330. So if you're in that green area, hopefully you've been sheltered in place most of the morning, and I know a lot of you are antsy. I can read some of the comments. You guys are antsy to get out, want to know when it will be lifted, and we will ask that question at that 2 o'clock press conference. But as of now, that shelter in place remains in effect. Exxon telling us they are doing it out of an abundance of caution. I'm going to read through some of these comments here.
I know some of our viewers have had some questions about road closures. We have not received any word about road closures, how it might affect traffic this afternoon in the area. Obviously, if you can avoid driving in the green area that you see there on your screen, that where you're supposed to be sheltering in place, that'd be great. But yeah, we have not heard about any road closures at this time.
Yeah, important to note. I've also seen a lot of those messages. Folks worried about getting out and about. And we were talking to Dr. Cameron Boca, a pulmonary expert, earlier this morning, and I asked him, you know, should people who are not in that green zone be out and about if they're anywhere near this plant, even though they're not in that shaded green zone? His recommendation, of course, is to, if you can avoid it, it's best to avoid it. As long as something is burning, particulates are being sent up into the air, and it is just prudent and smart not to be out and about anywhere near this until the situation is resolved, until we get more information about what the air quality is like and what folks need to know for those who live in and around the area. Also worth noting, if you have loved ones at the facility, there was no outside damage outside the actual facility, whatever this was, an explosion, whatever prompted this fire to break out. There was no outside damage outside the walls of the plant, and Exxon decided from the beginning to handle this internally. They have a team that is prepared and ready to put out these types of fires and handle these sorts of situations. So they've handled this on their own. Those water cannons that you see, those streams of water just being pounded onto what's left of that fire, that is all ExxonMobil employees. That is not outside fire agencies. What did she say? Did you hear that? Can you mute me? Stand by. So guys, if you've been monitoring and joining us on this social media stream, I want to quickly do one quick wrap up before we go off air here on social and let you know we're going to be back as soon as this press conference resumes. But what we've been following, a fire at this ExxonMobil Baytown complex. It started shortly after 10:30 this morning. Witnesses, viewers in the area reported hearing an explosion, feeling an explosion. Viewers telling us, quote, that it shook their entire building and rattled windows as far as 4 to 5 miles away. Initially, there were no injury reports. Now, the latest information we have is 3 people did suffer minor injuries. We're told those are burns, and that those people did decide to drive themselves to area clinics to be checked out, and we are still working to confirm if those were actual plant employees or if they were somewhere outside the plant and they were injured or were burned as a result of this. We've spoken to a doctor this morning. If you're watching us and you're in and around this area, things to watch out for is symptoms like trouble breathing, side pain, skin rashes, burning nose, burning in your throat. Anything like that is something you'll want to seek medical attention for immediately. A shelter in place remains in place right now south of 330 and west of that actual plant. That's that green area that we've shown you all morning long on the map. I know a lot of you are antsy to get out. But that shelter in place is still in effect. As soon as we learn more information about when it will be lifted, we'll let you know. We will be streaming a press conference with the city of Baytown. We presume, hopefully, Exxon officials will be there as well. We have not heard from Exxon since 11:30 this morning, when they sent out their last tweet, letting us know what was burning. Polypropylene is what was in that tank. So we will be throwing a lot of questions at the city of Baytown and Exxon at their 2 p.m. press conference. We have multiple crews on the ground there at the facility and another crew that will be streaming this press conference live. We will have it for you here on KHOU.com, on Facebook, Twitter, all our social media platforms. And we will sign off for now, but be right back up as soon as that press conference begins. I'm Marcelino Benito, and we'll see you in a little bit.
She's on her way. We'll get started here in just a minute, guys.
Okay.
Sir, while you're up there, can you just count to 10 for us?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They good?
Watch that.
You know how that is? You gonna be up front? Right here, Chief. Anyone else up front? All right. Tosh will be here shortly.
Okay.
I think so. I do. I think I do. So Mark, where's Mark?
Okay, we're waiting on one other official, and then we should get started. We see a female approach the podium that's going on.
Natasha's, yeah, Natasha's bringing that.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
I know, doing something, they'll see me again in a minute.
How was the mic check when he was counting? How was the mic check when he was counting? Just a date. Okay, I think.
They'll see me again in 10 seconds.
Sí, él lo está arreglando, lo está tratando de arreglar. Sí.
Hey, it's Jeff. We're about to start. Okay, we're just waiting on one person. I don't watch the screen when that's
Jason, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. We want to first get out, actually introduce everybody that's come together here. You see the plant manager here from Exxon, which we've been working with from the get-go on this, yes, Jason Duncan. My name's Natasha Barrett. I'm the City of Baytown Public Information Officer, and we're working together with Exxon to bring information to all of you. First and foremost, we realize the people who live here in Baytown and our surrounding communities are worried. You're concerned. This has happened before in this general area, not with Exxon, but with another plant. We understand that, and we've been working hour after hour to check on things, to monitor air quality. And we are here to tell you what's going on, what is out there, what is in the air. So let me first introduce everybody else that's here, and then Jason's going to take the helm and talk to you about what is happening at the plant. To my left over here is our fire chief from the City of Baytown, Kenneth Dobson. To his left, Laura Alvarado. She's a city council member from the City of Baytown. We'll all be speaking, answering your questions entirely, and then Laura, who's also a Spanish speaker, is going to be helping the Spanish stations with answering any questions they may have. So right now, I just want to say, this all began about 11:07 this morning. Our City of Baytown Emergency Operations Center was activated. So what does that mean? That means all the experts, the officials here in the city came together and started communication to figure out what was going on, what needed to be on the ground with Exxon fire teams to assure that everyone is okay, and if anybody needed any treatment, they would be okay. As a city, the City of Baytown, through our social media platforms and through phone calls, our swift reach system, we called all our citizens and let them know about a precautionary shelter in place. That was about 11:17, and we've told people that that shelter in place is still going on just to be on the safe side. I know a lot of people are worried about what they're breathing, and we're going to get to that right now. We had outdoor warning sirens that were activated about at 11:20, right, Jason?
Yep, 11:20.
And Baytown Fire has been on the scene to help with anything that you guys at Exxon need. So right now, I'm going to give the floor over to Jason so he can talk about what's happening at his plant. Jason?
Yeah, thanks, Natasha. My name is Jason Duncan. I'm with ExxonMobil. I work for ExxonMobil, the Baytown Olefins plant manager here. So, as Natasha said, let me just go into. I know there's a lot of concern in the community for the fire that we're currently addressing. I do want to take this opportunity to be very clear and transparent about what is happening out at the site. And so, with that, I'm going to give you some information from a statement that I have prepared. So, in response to an explosion fire at the ExxonMobil Baytown Olefins plant, our emergency response teams are in the process of executing our response plans to ensure people in our community and our facilities are safe. And let me just reiterate, it is our #1 priority to protect the people in the community and the people that work for us at ExxonMobil. The process unit affected by the fire processes is a light hydrocarbon mixture of propane and propylene. We're working right now to shut down the units so that we can isolate the source of the fire. Off-site care is being provided for 37 people with non-life-threatening injuries, all minor in nature. We continue to conduct air monitoring along our fence line and have seen no adverse environmental effects. Out of abundance of caution, as Natasha said, the City of Baytown advised our local community to shelter in place while we isolate the source of the fire and extinguish the fire. At ExxonMobil, our top priority continues to be caring for our people in our community, in the facilities which we operate. We're also committed to continue communication with our regulatory agencies, working very collaboratively with the City of Baytown and the other agencies, as well as to make sure, that we get the fire out, which we're working very diligently to do, and continue to protect our people and the community. So with that, I'll take any questions.
The injured people you're talking about, what kind of injuries are you describing?
Minor burns, first degree, the reports I have, and again, keep in mind it's early at this point, but non-life threatening, we can confirm that. Minor burns, first degree type burns.
Inhalation problem, any upper respiratory problem?
That has not been reported to me.
And what is that unit that is burning right now? What's it called?
That unit is called our propylene recovery unit.
Right.
And it's an area of the plant where we take propylene and we purify it for further production.
When did you all notice something was wrong there? What happened?
When the incident occurred. So as far as do we know what happened, we did have a loss of containment, and we did have a fire and explosion. We do not know what the cause of that incident is, but I can tell you we're going to work diligently to figure it out, right? So it doesn't happen again. Apply the learnings. We're going to share them with our industry, right? To make sure it doesn't happen at another site.
Jason, does loss
Yes, sir.
of containment mean that you had product that got out of the...
Yes, sir. Loss of containment means I lose containment of our hydrocarbon outside of a pipe or a vessel.
Do you know how many people were working there at that time?
No, sir, I can't confirm that. I can confirm that we do have 100% accountability of our people. And I talked about those that were getting the medical treatments.
Were there any explosions at the time of the fire? Explosions?
Yes, there was. There was a reported explosion. Yes, sir.
Just going back, is 37 people with minor injuries?
Minor injuries, non-life-threatening.
And are those mostly burns, or are we talking about other things?
I don't have the details, sir. It's early yet for me to have
Mr.
them.
Duncan?
Yes, sir.
Has the refinery had to cut back because the propylene unit can't take feed from it? Has production at the refinery had to cut back?
Yeah, I can tell you it's our priority to make sure that we maintain stable operations, obviously to protect the community and the people that we work. Our systems that you see, our safety systems activated as designed, and we have a very integrated incident command structure that we utilize across our plants in the complex to make sure all that is managed safely.
So has production been reduced at the refinery?
I can't
feed can't go to the propylene unit?
Yeah, right now I can't address the specific reductions that we're taking.
Okay.
But
there are reductions?
No. What I meant to say is I'm not aware of the reductions. Right now our priority is the safety of the people in the communities in which we work. It's not on the production of the facility.
And if I could say, one thing we do want to communicate to everyone watching is the safety right now.
Absolutely.
So let's go over
Absolutely.
that. Air quality, people see the black smoke, and of course they're worried. So if we could talk about that and what they're breathing and what you found through air quality monitoring right now.
Yeah, Natasha. Yes. So right now, what is on fire, as I mentioned in my statement, is propane and propylene mixture. It's a light hydrocarbon mixture. There's been non-detectable quantities. We've seen no adverse impact to the environment based on the fence line monitoring and the monitoring in the community that we've done, working collaboratively with.
And that's going to be ongoing throughout the day.
We'll continue to
further.
do that.
And that's
Continue
not
to make
just
sure it's
pure
safe.
monitoring.
No, the monitoring is going, but the city of Baytown is doing monitoring, Harris County is doing monitoring, and ExxonMobil.
As well as our fence line. Yes, sir.
States in there somewhere too, aren't they?
Oh, they're always checking in with us, that's for sure, and we're checking in with them.
Monitoring the air.
Of course.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay.
An employee gave us a call and said something about possible radiation leak caused by the fire. Can you verify that?
No, we can confirm a no radiation leak. What you're likely referring to is that we do have some radiation trucks, right, that are used to inspect our equipment. They're over 300 feet away from where the fire is occurring, and right now there's no concern that we have of any radiation issues.
Hospitals, how many of them are of the 37 are in the hospitals right now, and which ones?
The latest update I have is 0.
So no one's in the hospital?
Nobody.
Do you have any idea how much longer this is going to burn?
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, our focus is on obviously isolating the unit, which we have done, right? What you see now is residual hydrocarbon burning from the unit. We have the area contained, and we have the firefighters our highly trained firefighters are actually doing a great job with containing the fire. I can only speculate how much longer it will be, but just from the visual, you can see that the fire is starting to
Fire
burn.
under control? Is it under control?
What's that, can you say that again?
Is the fire under control?
I would say we have the fire isolated and contained right now, and we continue to work to make sure, one, the safety of the community, the safety of our firefighters, right, and our people, which we all have 100% accountability now.
And Mark, you were going to ask, sorry, 1 second.
It sounds like you have released some of your workers for the day.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What kind of steps are being taken to protect the workers in the other parts of the facility, and is there any
Yes,
risk
sir.
to them at this
Yeah,
point?
yes, sir. I understand the concern. So what we have done is, again, once we get accountability within our incident command structure, and again, we're working collaboratively with all the sites in the area, right? Then we took a decision to start to release non-essential personnel so they could go home. That's the decision we took.
How many people were evacuated that you know of?
Evacuated. So when the incident occurred, our emergency procedures in our incident command structure would have those folks go to a evacuation assembly area so we could expedite a head count and understand that we had full accountability. We performed those activities, but day in and day out at the site that we operate, it's 500 or so people that I have at the site.
Jason,
Yes, sir.
where did you say the 37 injured are right now?
They have been taken to one of our off-site medical providers. I don't have the specific information right now of which one they are.
What does that mean exactly? To a clinic?
Yeah, it's more of a clinic. It's not a hospital. It's not a hospital.
Is it something that's owned by Exxon?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
Well, what is it then? Where are they? What's the name of
They're
it?
at our off-site occupational. Ours, the one we typically use in our day in day out business. It's I don't have the name, to be honest. It's OcuCare. I don't have the name.
And then this was as a request from the employees, or they were told to go there and that's it?
No. So when part of the accountability in the assembly area, what we always do is ask our employees to report any kind of adverse impacts and effects that they had. Once we reported that, then we got them care immediately, which is what we do. We care for our people.
So kind of back, we're waiting for that product basically to burn out. They can't put it out immediately. They're just going to let it burn.
Yeah, I would say they're working as hard as they can to get the fire put out. Obviously, we apologize for the disruption in the community. We're working to do that. I have very, very highly qualified firefighters that are running that business there. The unit, they have gotten isolation on the unit, right? But there are some limitations as far as how quick we can get it out based on protecting the people that are addressing the fire.
So is the strategy to let it burn out or to put it out?
Well, the strategy is to put it out, but you know, we have it isolated. So.
And this is for the city of Baytown. How many units, firefighters, are fighting this right now?
Well, Chief, can you answer that for us?
And while he's coming up, are you putting water on that? What are you fighting? Fire?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Water.
Chief, go ahead. The question was, how many of your units are fighting this fire? I know we've had several on standby, as we do in any kind of situation with Exxon, but if you could please go ahead.
So the city of Baytown provides support for Exxon. Exxon uses their own firefighters at the scene. We come in for medical response or any other type of support we can provide. The city of Baytown had 3 ambulances, 2 engines, and a hazmat vehicle, and 2 command vehicles there in support of it.
And we want to reiterate through our partnership here that you can rely on our social media platforms and, of course, through all of you communicating to everyone who lives here in the surrounding area the updates. We'll continue to put it on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook about the shelter in place, which does, out of caution right now for everybody, remain in place. And once there are any changes, we'll put it on there and, of course, get the word out to you guys. Right now, we're going to bring up our council member, Laura Alvarado, who's going to be able to reiterate some of the key points to our Spanish language viewers. So this, once again, is Laura Alvarado.
Thank you, Natasha. I'm here today as well because part of my district is in the zone of the shelter in place. So of course, all of us on council are watching this very closely. So I appreciate the collaboration that's happening right now with our Baytown city officials as well as ExxonMobil and our emergency management. So, otra vez mi nombre es Laura Alvarado, yo soy concejal del distrito número 1 aquí en Baytown. Parte de mi área está afectada en la zona que están diciendo que la gente se quede adentro. Los mensajes ya fueron a sus casas y están inscritos en el programa de Swift 911. Eso también está disponible en la página web de la ciudad de Baytown para que tengan información en qué es lo que está pasando con la emergencia. Ahorita la prioridad número 1 es que contengan todo en esa área y eso es lo que está pasando ahorita. La quemazón está contenida y los bomberos de Exxon ya lo tienen ahí asegurado. Los bomberos de la ciudad de Baytown solamente están ahí para apoyar. Si acaso necesitan bomberos adicional y también para casos de emergencia médico. Ahorita al momento hay 37 personas de la compañía de Exxon que fueron afectados, pero fueron casos mínimos. No hay nada grave que está pasando con esas personas, pero claro que van a seguir comunicándose con ellos para asegurar que no se les suba nada más. También lo que quieren enforzar es que todos los equipos que tenemos para revisar el aire, qué es lo que está pasando y qué es lo que está subiendo para afuera para el aire, la gente ve la quemazón negra y claro se van a molestar por lo que está pasando, pero al momento no han detectado nada. No nomás la ciudad de Baytown está con el equipo, pero también la oficina de emergencia de nosotros de la ciudad y también el condado y por seguro también el estado también está mirando todo lo que estamos reportando sobre la quemazón. Sí hubo una explosión, pero otra vez para decir que está todo al momento contenido y la gente puede asegurar que estamos trabajando muy duro con Exxon y con todos para seguir que se calme todo ahí en la planta.
¿Hasta qué hora pudiera estar la orden de resguardo?
Ahorita ese momento no se puede saber, estamos nomás siguiendo monitorar lo que está pasando en la planta. Ya pues si han visto recientemente ya se ha reducido el fuego que está allí, tenemos que revisar que todo esté bien. Todos los empleados de Exxon que estaban en la área están acontados. No hay nadie que se quedó allí. Al momento, otra vez la prioridad sí es que todos estén fuera del peligro.
Esa área que usted describe, Distrito 1, ¿hay algún oficial de la ciudad que esté ahí monitoreando que nadie esté enfermo ni nada por el estilo?
Pues yo soy la representante de ahí, de esa área. Yo estaba muy cerca cuando pasó y empecé yo a fijarme en mi teléfono qué lo está pasando. Empecé a ir a manejar en la área porque hay mucha gente en mi área que pues hablan español o no tienen manera de poner el app que tenemos para que les llamen y que algo está pasando. Yo más o menos sé quién son esas personas y puedo ir y manejar alrededor de la área. Nosotros siempre estamos a cuidado con las personas y mandándole información.
Thank you. And thank you so much for helping us with that, Laura. I
No
appreciate
problem.
you. And thank you all for being here. Once again, we'll communicate to you the next time we have some more information and or a press conference and any information to get out to the public. We appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything up, Chief? Did y'all come this way?
Guys, we just finished this is Marcelino Benito here in the KHOU 11 newsroom. We just finished watching the first press conference of the day on this Exxon plant fire, and a lot of new information coming out that we quickly want to recap for you. First and foremost, that injury total has now gone up to 37. 37 people are getting care right now for minor injuries. We're told those injuries are mainly minor burns, first-degree minor burns. Again, initially when this incident unfolded, we were told there were no injuries. We now know there are 37 people being treated off-site for minor injuries. That is the good news. We know air quality monitoring continues to happen as we speak. Recapping the incident itself, we know an explosion happened around 11:07 this morning. By 11:17, there was already a precautionary shelter in place that had been issued for those west of the plant in Baytown and south of 330. The public information officer for the city of Baytown saying that was just to be on the safe side. We're told outdoor sirens and warnings were issued when this incident did unfold. Exxon did call this an explosion. That's the first time we've heard them use those words, and telling us that their emergency response teams are focused on safety and fully extinguishing this fire. As you can see in those live pictures on the left of your screen, that fire is still burning, although it looks a lot better than it did around 11 this morning when we first started covering this breaking news. At this point, we asked about what may have caused the explosion, the cause of this fire. They are still working to figure that out. They don't know yet what caused this. They did tell us the good news is they have 100% accountability of all their people, all their employees that were there at the facility today. And they are telling us, Exxon and the city of Baytown, that there's no adverse impact to the environment at this point, and that there will be ongoing air quality monitoring throughout the day, both by Exxon, the city of Baytown, and the Harris County Pollution Control, the Office of Emergency Management for the county, telling us they are conducting air quality monitoring as well. So that is the latest information that we got from officials. Also, for those of you at home who have been wondering about your loved ones, Exxon telling us that non-essential personnel have been sent home. And most importantly, we want to reiterate that green map you see on the right side. That shelter in place was described as a precautionary shelter in place, and that is still in effect right now, and that has not been lifted. So that's the latest that we heard from officials there. Jaime, is he mic'd up? Is he good to go? Alrighty, remind me your name?
Marcelo D'Amico.
Marcelo D'Amico. And Marcelo, walk me through a little bit about your expertise. Introduce yourself to viewers, what you do for a living.
Sure. I'm the president of a fire protection engineering consulting company here in League City, and we work mainly in the oil and gas sector.
So when you see these images, you have a good idea of what's going on there?
Yeah, this isn't something that I would think anybody should be too worried about from a safety standpoint after the initial explosion. What it looks like to me, it's they're waiting until the fuel inside of the process unit burns itself out, and what they're doing is cooling the peripheral area and the structural steel to maintain the integrity of all the other parts of the facility so that they don't collapse on top of each other.
So we heard a lot during that press conference about containment and what they're doing to contain and extinguish this fire. So you were telling me earlier, is there a difference between containment and actually putting the fire out? Because they said the fire is contained, but we're still seeing flames.
That's correct. So what they're saying about the fire being contained is it's not spreading. So they contained it to one area, and just to kind of compare it to what the viewers have seen from the ITC fire, this is a little bit of a different fire in that it's in a process unit. It's not a storage tank catching on fire, so they may be surprised that they don't see that white stuff, firefighting foam. Here they're using water just to contain the fire to one area and again cool the adjacent areas so that the fire doesn't superheat the structural steel and cause any structural damage to the area.
You were explaining to me earlier what they have to do because basically they're letting it burn out, essentially.
Correct.
So, but to do that, they had to cut off all supplies going through those pipes. Can you walk me through that?
Right. It's not as simple as just shutting off a valve like you would at your house and shutting off the water, for example. It's kind of a huge symphony of pipes that make up a process unit, and what they're doing is they're basically shutting it down based on their protocol, one item at a time until it's all completely shut down. And once that's completely shut, that's what you're going to see is the fire is eventually going to put itself out because the fuel is going to burn, right? So the fuel is going to burn itself out.
So even though they cut off the supply, there's still they still have to, whatever's in that pipe needs to continue
We call it
burning out.
isolatable volume. So imagine you shut off the valve water to your house. There's still water inside of the pipe. So you still have to open your faucet to let the residual water go out. So basically that's what's happening here. This fire is that residual water going out. So eventually when that water's out of the pipe or the fuel is out of the pipe, the fire is going to be put out.
And so a lot of people at home wondering how long, and you were saying earlier there's a huge time frame. I mean, we don't know exactly, right?
That's right. You really don't know. You don't know how much fuel is in that piping network. So it could be 30 minutes, it could be an hour, it could be another 4 or 5 hours. You really don't know.
Visually, from your expertise, I'm sure you've seen some of the video earlier today on social media when we saw that huge fireball, a lot more black smoke. I mean, things are improving, right? What do you assess based on what it looks like now?
What it looks like, again, in terms of them containing the fire, that distillation column
That's the initial video right after the explosion that we're looking at, sent in to us by a viewer. So it looks better, right?
Yeah, well, the initial explosion is very bad.
Yeah.
It's propane, which is normally in gas form. Sometimes it's kept under pressure in a liquid form. So it's going to be a big explosion. Imagine what's under your grill, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a propane tank.
Yeah.
So if that exploded, it would be big because it's kept under pressure. So that's what you see here is that initial explosion, and then after the initial explosion is what you're seeing currently, which is just a residual fire from the outlet of the pipe, right, that exploded, or the equipment that exploded, and that's what you're seeing now. It looks much better. They've contained it. It looks like the firefighters are doing a great job trying to cool the adjacent area and try to get that water stream to directly impinge onto the structure so that the temperature of the steel doesn't hit that failure point.
And so we were talking earlier about when people see these sorts of fires, plant fires, the concern is they think back to ITC, they think back to the Crosby plant fire that we had also right after ITC. There's a lot of concern from folks in this area, but this is not ITC, right? There's a lot of differences. Can you walk through some of them?
Sure. This is very different. I would say, again, they really have contained this. What happened at ITC was an atmospheric storage tank. So, you know, when the folks around are driving, they see those big tanks on 225. It was one of those big tanks that caught on fire. It requires a lot more firefighting resources to put one of those out. And if additional tanks like ITC catch on fire, then it becomes a real big problem, because normally facilities aren't designed to put out fires that big. Here, this is what the facility's fire protection system was designed for. They're doing a great job. You can't, you know, things are going to happen, and it looks like they're doing what their emergency response plans have been developed to do.
This clearly is not going to burn for days, is what I'm hearing you say.
The isolatable volume should burn out in the next few hours, or, you know, tonight, something like that.
The other big difference that I think people will recognize is during ITC we saw a lot of foam. You touched on it earlier. It was that they were fighting the fire with something different. We're seeing water here.
Yep.
And that's because we don't want that to collapse, is what you were saying. Could you talk about that?
Sure. So with ITC, what you see is a two-dimensional fire, right? So imagine you spill gasoline on the floor and it catches on fire. It's two-dimensional. Traditionally, firefighting foam is used because you can blanket that spill with the firefighting foam, and it prevents the vapors from reigniting. Here, what we have is really a three-dimensional fire, so it's much different. So there's fuel being burned in a three-dimensional way, and there's really no putting out the fire unless you isolate that source and let the fire burn itself out. So what these guys are doing is they're just using water, foam. There's no additional benefit to use foam. Water is the perfect medium to fight this fire the way that they're doing.
And the water's not putting it out, right? Yeah, I'm on.
The dog is gonna. I'm sorry. The dog.
It's okay. What's going on?
The judge is going to be speaking in.
Okay.
I love her.
Okay. So the water's not really putting out the fire. Its focus is to try to cool off the metals so we don't have a
That's
collapse.
right. So if you look at the surrounding area of the facility, from the news footage that I've seen, there's pipe racks, there's other process equipment. So what the firefighters are trying to do is basically cool every single thing around it so that the radiant heat from the fire, right? So imagine a giant oven emitting heat to you. It's basically, they don't want to have the radiant heat get to a certain level of temperature that it superheats the steel to its failure point, and then you have structural collapse, which is, well, we don't want this tower to collapse onto other equipment.
We heard in the press conference that they described this as a light hydrocarbon mixture, propylene. It's a propylene recovery unit where they said they purify it for further production. That, too, a big difference from what we saw at ITC, right? That stored benzene, is that right? Or benzene was being sent up into the air?
The ITC fire started with a naphtha storage tank, but then it spread to other benzene and other hydrocarbons. This is a hydrocarbon itself. They're all kind of like in the same family. It's, you know, it's not nice stuff, but at the same time, it's not naphtha, which is what was at ITC. So it has the same impact. You're going to see heavy amounts of black smoke. You're going to have air quality monitoring, and, you know, it's up to the community to do that and, you know, prevent people from being affected.
So we have a shelter in place just west of the facility. It's a targeted area west of the facility, south of 330. But we're getting a lot of questions from viewers saying, hey, I live north of the facility, but I'm still pretty close to the facility. From your expertise, I don't know if you can answer this, would you, if you're near this facility but not quite in the shelter-in-place zone, is it important? Would you recommend just not being out and about while this is burning, or what would you tell folks?
I live in League City. I mean, it's south of the facility, but if something was happening, I would probably just stay indoors and just use my gut instinct. Do I smell something? Do I see something? That way, you kind of use your senses to determine if I should be indoors or outdoors. And then what they're going to do is they're going to use, through that green area that you see on the footage, is they're using air quality monitoring, and they're going to determine levels at the periphery of those to determine if they need to increase that area.
Do you anticipate the shelter-in-place being lifted? Do you think the shelter-in-place will be in place until this is completely put out?
Yes,
at least at the minimum?
I believe as soon as the smoke is done, they'll probably lift the shelter in place. But until this is completely put out, I think they were going to probably keep it.
And one other thing that I want to touch on, just looking at the video now that you noted earlier, is she's coming out. All right, we'll pause for a second, and we are going to switch over. County Judge Lena Hidalgo, I'm told, is about to speak, and she's taking the podium, so we'll take her live now.
She's busy.
We're muted, right?
Everybody ready? Joe, you good?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, we're good?
All right. We're here in Baytown after witnessing the incident that started a few hours ago. Our first priority, of course, is the safety of the residents, the safety of the community, the people of Harris County. We're watching very carefully to make sure that the workers are safe, the first responders are safe, the community is safe. That's why as soon as the fire started, we deployed air monitoring, and we have been watching the air, the quality of our air for hours. The information is on Ready Harris right now. I understand for the people of Baytown it's difficult to look out your window and see a plume of smoke, especially given what's happened before. I understand it's frightening, and it's something that we're watching out for. So folks can go to readyharris.org right now and see the results of the fire. From the county's standpoint, we have offered any and all resources. Our Harris County Industrial Liaison is here and has been participating in Unified Command. Fire Marshal's office is ready to support. Our Sheriff's office has also sent their Industrial Liaison. Deputy Emergency Coordinator Francisco Sanchez has been here for a few hours also supporting, and we're ready to aid anything that the city of Baytown might need or that the plant might need additional support with. More fundamentally, we know that this is the fourth major fire since January, and Harris County recognizes that. We've been working incredibly hard to address that situation. Just yesterday at Commissioner's Court, we took some serious action to improve, and that's why today we were able to come on scene immediately with air monitors and make the information available to the public. I'm happy to speak more on that as well if the media has questions. So I'll just share now in Spanish. En español, estamos aquí en Baytown respondiendo al incidente que sucedió hace un par de horas. Por parte del condado, nuestra prioridad siempre es la seguridad de nuestra comunidad, la seguridad de los trabajadores de primeros auxilios y también de la comunidad. Es por eso que desde que empezó este incidente, el condado ha tenido monitoreo del aire. Hemos estado monitoreando desde el principio, y en la página web de Ready Harris tenemos la información en vivo de todos lo que se está identificando en el aire. Lo bueno es que en este momento no hemos visto ninguna lectura elevada. El aire parece estar en buenas condiciones y seguiremos monitoreando hasta que estemos seguros que ya no hay incendio y que la situación está bien. También tenemos aquí la oficina del alguacil. Ha estado ofreciendo cualquier apoyo. Todas nuestras oficinas, si es que la planta o la ciudad de Baytown requirieran un apoyo, estamos listos para ofrecer ese apoyo. Nuestra oficina del Fire Marshal también ha estado disponible. Tenemos nuestro enlace industrial como parte del comando de todo este incidente, y nuestra oficina de emergencias ha estado también disponible. Más fundamentalmente, yo entiendo que para la comunidad de Baytown es difícil ver fuera de la ventana, notar otra vez un incendio. Esa preocupación se entiende, y fundamentalmente sabemos en el condado Harris que hay mucho que tiene que cambiar. Ya este es el cuarto incidente este año pues ya mayor, y precisamente ayer en la Corte de Comisionados tomamos acción directa para manejar este tipo de situaciones. I will add, we know that the monitoring regime has been an issue. That's not a secret. The fact that there's not enough reporting about what's in all of these facilities, the fact that there needs to be improvements as to how we report what is in there, and that's why part of the work the county is doing. Just yesterday, we directed our pollution control department to come back with requests for additional air monitors, soil monitoring, everything we might need. We requested that there be more work on alert system, information systems for the community. We'll continue improving to better ask for reports from the facilities. Ultimately, we know that a lot lies in state law, and that's also what we're pushing for. But what we know right now, we have got to continue watching for the safety of the community. We'll continue monitoring until we know for sure that the fire is out. We'll continue sharing that information live. We're continuing to make up for many years of not enough work being done in the county's ability to monitor the air. But as you can see, even today we're doing better. We were able to get on scene right as this started and get the information to our community.
Has the monitoring so far raised any concerns?
So far, the welcome news is we haven't seen any concerns from the monitoring. We will not stop monitoring until we're certain that the fire is out and we are 100% safe.
Judge, this keeps happening, especially under your watch. What is it you can do maybe to try and prevent this? Because in 8 months you've handled several of these already. So what is it you're doing, or what is it you can do to try and prevent this from keep happening in our area?
We've had 4 major fires since January. One thing we already did after the fires at ITC and Chemco is we asked for an independent gap analysis of where the county needs to be. What I inherited was a county that wasn't able to adequately get information to the community, do the steady state monitoring that I think we need. And so we asked for an independent gap analysis. The results of that gap analysis are public on Ready Harris. We presented it to Commissioner's Court just yesterday, and we took action on those gaps. So the specific action we're taking, asking for more air monitors so that we can monitor not only when there's an incident, as we're doing today, and we're doing faster, but also as a matter of course, so the community knows what the air looks like, just as they go about their day-to-day lives, making sure that we do better in alerting the community as soon as we know there's an incident, and working on that, and working on better communication across agencies, across different jurisdictions in the event of an incident like this one. More longer term, there are other issues. We'll be working with our fire marshal's office so we can inspect facilities more often, but fundamentally and ultimately the facilities are only required to report what they have in their facilities every year. That goes back to state law. What I want the community to know, we at the county are taking an independent look, a close look at what we need to do, acting on it and sharing that with the public. There's some work that lies with the state, and we will do everything we can to advocate there. It's not right for us to live next to the petrochemical complex and live in fear sometimes, so we have to improve on the situation, and we're doing so. Today, with monitoring as soon as the fire started, as always, offering all our resources for support to the plant, to the city of Baytown, working with our partners as best we can, and continuing to improve, because we have got to find that balance where we live next to this petrochemical complex, but we also know that we are safe. All right. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
We just finished hearing from Harris County Judge Alina Hidalgo holding a press conference with the Office of Emergency Management about this Exxon fire that we've been following all morning long. Recapping what she told us, obviously the first priority for the county is the safety of its residents. They told us initially after this event they deployed air monitoring right away. That air monitoring continues at this time. They're watching the air quality closely, but at this time they see no adverse impact to air quality. And she directed folks who are interested in seeing what those readings are right now to go to readyharris.org. And that website currently has updated information as those readings continue at this time. She also admitted and talked about how it's difficult as a resident of Baytown and communities where these refineries are located to see to see a plume of smoke up in the sky. That's concerning in light of what we've seen. also touching on the fact that there have been 4 major refinery plant fires in our area since January of this year. She understands the concern that a lot of people have when they see these things happen, and reiterating her commitment to ensure that air quality will continue to be monitored and they're on top of it. The county has offered all resources to the city of Baytown, to Exxon, and the sheriff's office industrial team also ready to support Exxon and Baytown in any way that they need, or with anything that they might request as they continue to deal with what's going on. Before we get off here, we want to fully recap what we've learned from these 2 back-to-back press conferences, recapping how this event unfolded. We know it started with an explosion. That's the word Exxon is now using now, around 11:07 this morning. 10 minutes later, a precautionary shelter in place was issued, just to be on the safe side, we're told. Outdoor sirens and warnings did sound once this explosion happened. Again, Exxon calling this an explosion. They say their emergency response teams responded swiftly, focused on safety. We learned a lot more about the unit that was impacted here with this explosion on that plant. At that plant site, we know it's a propylene recovery unit, and we're told that unit is responsible for purifying propylene for further production. It's a light hydrocarbon mixture, and they've been working to shut down that unit to extinguish that fire. You're looking at live pictures right now of what's left of that fire that is continuing to burn out. Jaime, before we go, if we could just show maybe the viewer video quickly, if it's possible, so people can just get a sense of how it's been different. That is what we started with around 11 this morning, shortly after that explosion. You can see the thick cloud of smoke, a lot of fire, a fireball in the air, an explosion that viewers told us they felt several miles away that shook their homes, rattled their windows. And now fast forward a couple hours and you see live pictures where efforts are still underway to extinguish this, and it continues to burn out. We heard from a fire expert who says they're just going to have to wait. They've cut off the supply to this tower. So at this point, whatever was left in there is what's burning. It could burn for 30 minutes, it could burn for 2 hours, it could burn for longer. You just don't know until all of that burns out. That water that you see sprayed by Exxon firefighters really just being used to cool that metal, so that tower does not collapse and make things any worse. So that water's not really putting out that fire. At this point, they have to let it burn out. Recapping injuries for you, 37 total injuries we're told by Exxon. Those are people, employees, all suffering minor injuries, things like minor burns, first-degree burns, we're told. All those 37 people are not at local hospitals. They're at an off-site clinic that the plant and these types of plants use to deal with these workplace situations. Again, the good news there that it's all minor injuries. Again, 37 people. A lot of questions we've heard throughout the day about what may have caused this explosion. We still don't know what caused it. Exxon looking into that. They pledged to release that information and pass it along to others in the industry as soon as they learn more about what happened. 100% of their staff on site, we're told that's about 500 people today, are accounted for. And we are told again by Exxon and county officials, no adverse impact to the environment, but that ongoing air quality will continue throughout the day by Exxon, Baytown, Harris County, and all relevant agencies. That is the latest on this ExxonMobil plant fire we've been following since the morning here on our social platforms. We have a team of reporters on site covering the press conferences, speaking to plant workers, covering the story from all angles for you, and we will sign off here on social media, and we hope you tune in at 4 o'clock for the 411 on KHOU 11 News. At 4, 5, and 6, we'll have the latest on those later newscasts. I'm Marcelino Benito. We'll see you later.